Chapter 1066. Jing Qinglong was shocked. To be precise, he was shocked by Su Yu's recklessness. Mr. Su, I know you have a series of famous battles, and I have carefully analyzed them. They are indeed amazing, but in a real fight, you may not be able to defeat me, not to mention Qi Ming. In the Heavenly Knife region, no one can exchange more than 10 blows with him, except the Great Deputy Region Master and the Heavenly Knife Region Master. Jing Qinglong said seriously and urgently. The crisis was approaching. Su Yu shook his head gently. Do you really think we can escape? After a moment of silence, Jing Qinglong sighed. No. He could only block 10 blows, and each blow took a breath. 10 breaths would not be enough to escape far. So forget about luck. Without a master to rescue us, Qi Ming will not be merciful. Su Yu understood Jing Qinglong's mentality. In times of crisis, he placed his hopes on an illusory accident. In the words of his previous life, it was the mentality of an ostrich. Jing Qinglong took a deep breath and said bitterly, Just you and me and this puppet? Enough. Su Yu said calmly. Good. Jing Qinglong untied his clothes, revealing a strong granite body, holding his sword with one hand and said, Today, let's go all out. Chi. The crack in the space in front of them hissed, expanding and shrinking. Suddenly, the crack that had shrunk to the size of a strand of hair expanded 100 times. A figure in a red robe stepped out. I thought I would have to chase you for a while, but you didn't escape, Qi Ming said with surprise. Jing Qinglong said seriously, Even if my family is destroyed, I will make you pay the price. 10 blows from you? Qi Ming showed a faint expression of sarcasm. 10 moves, but they couldn't even injure him. But this time he had 2 other masters. The world's new rising star, Su Yu. Its power was comparable to Stage 3 All Creation's silver puppet. Soul-stirring. Jing Qinglong shouted, his broadsword like a rainbow, swinging out layers of sword energy like a tornado. Qi Ming took out a dark chain with one hand, turned his wrist, and the chain was like a dark poisonous snake, swallowing black flames. Chi. Thousands of sword energy in the flames were quickly extinguished like moths, and the tornado collapsed. Bull-fighting spirit. After Jing Qinglong finished his first move, he immediately used the second move. Poison Dragon Soul Entanglement. Star-cutting sword. Heaven's Serpent. In Jing Xing's and Qiu Er's eyes, both parties were exchanging blows. Their figures were blurry, and they could only feel sword qi crisscrossing the place. The chains were filled with ghostly qi. Su Yu's eyes could see clearly that if there was no difference in cultivation level, Jing Qinglong would not lose to Qi Ming by too much. Unfortunately, the difference in the all creations realm was difficult to make up for in other aspects. Moreover, Qi Ming himself was proficient in chains, and his fighting power was extraordinary. In the beginning, both sides were evenly matched. In the middle, Jing Qinglong was on the verge of defeat. In the 10th move of the later stage, a black chain stabbed into Jing Qinglong's chest like a viper. The sound of bones cracking could be heard as Jing Qinglong was sent flying. A fist-sized hole appeared in his chest. Both of them exchanged 10 blows in less than 10 breaths, which gave Su Yu enough time to set up the sword formation. Su Yu's gaze turned sharp. He put his middle finger and index finger together and formed a sword shape. Within his 2 fingers, a silver sword light was constantly swallowed. There were tens of thousands of threads, and they gathered at Su Yu's fingertips to form a long sword similar to the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword. The difference was that this was purely condensed sword energy. Releasing the sword energy? Such shallow swordsmanship is a disgrace. Qi Ming casually struck out with the mighty power of all creations, suppressing Su Yu. Su Yu did not even look up. He waved his right hand, and a long crack appeared in the space where his arm had waved. All the all creation's mighty force was sucked into the crack, and it did not even cause a ripple. Sword energy that can shatter the void is rare. Well, although I don't know who you are from the Red Blood Palace, if you meet me, you will die. Qi Ming was indifferent. His body was blurred, and he teleported to Su Yu's side. The chain in his palm was ready to go, swallowing black flames as it went straight for Su Yu's chest. Su Yu dodged sideways, not daring to touch the flames. A trace of the remaining power of the disastrous fire in his body was constantly surging, as if it had sensed something. What the flame was self-evident. The disastrous fire. It was the disastrous fire that would appear when the all-creation's mighty force went through the ordeal. Without the tempering of the disastrous fire, touching the disastrous fire without permission would lead to annihilation. Can you escape? Qi Ming shook his head gently. It's over. The pitch-black chain in his palm suddenly expanded to 10 times its original length, and it sealed off this part of the world with the speed of lightning. In the chain, a large black disastrous fire erupted like a volcano, engulfing the sealed world. Chi. Suddenly, in the flames of the disastrous fire, a silver sword light, shaped like a flying dragon, danced in the air and swept away the disastrous fire. Looking closely, the so-called silver sword light was Su Yu's long sword of sword energy. It can even destroy the disastrous fire, and it has a space attribute. That sounds familiar. Qi Ming vaguely guessed something, but nothing mattered. In the face of absolute power, any means would be a foolish last-ditch struggle. Black dragon splitting the sun. Qi Ming roared and teleported. The chain was straight like a spear, and like a black dragon, it broke the void and went straight for Su Yu. This move blocked all directions, and there was no way to retreat. It was forcing a head-on battle. Su Yu's face was calm. He put his palms together, and his eyes flickered with sword light. Sword energy return. Puff, 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 all the pores on Su Yu's body opened, and silver spots of light were emitted from them. Then, hair-thin strands of sword energy flew out from the pores like raindrops. It wasn't a single strand that flew out, nor was it a single time. Instead, hundreds of thousands of silver sword chis flew out of all his pores. At a glance, Su Yu's body was 100 feet wide, shaped like a silver sun. He was like an ancient Buddha, bathed in the silver halo. The sun and the black dragon converged, and a silent blow broke out. Rub, rub, Su Yu and Qi Ming both took a few steps back, shaken. Su Yu felt as if his whole body was being scorched by fire, and his chest was sore. His body was in turmoil and his blood was boiling. However, Qi Ming wasn't much better. Tens of thousands of sword energy entered his body, destroying him from the inside out. He had to use most of his all-creation's strength to force them out of his body. Sword energy hidden in the Dantian, breathing out millions. How did you cultivate your Dantian? It's so big. Qi Ming was shocked. Hiding sword energy in the Dantian was a skill that many swordsmanship martial artists were proficient in. This method could only be used by the fairy realm. Once one ascended to the Almighty, the Dantian would turn into a fetal crystal and lose the space to hide sword energy. However, someone like Su Yu, who hid hundreds of thousands of whiffs of sword energy, was unheard of. You flatter me. Su Yu forcibly suppressed his injuries, and with a flip of his palm, a pitch-black needle appeared. It swallowed the power of the void, and the next moment it disappeared without a trace. When it reappeared, it was nailed an inch into Qi Ming's forehead. Qi Ming was shocked, and tried to force the needle out with the all-creation's strength, but the pitch-black needle suddenly turned into nothingness and nailed Qi Ming's soul. In an instant, a heart-wrenching scream came from Qi Ming's mouth. Ah! It's the soul-piercing needle. How could the Region Master's treasure be in your hands? This was the famous treasure of the Heavenly Knife Region Master, a semi-manufactured fairy artifact that specialized in subduing souls. He had given it to Qianli for safekeeping, but it had fallen into Su Yu's hands. First, the sword energy entered his body, which required more than half of the all-creation's strength to suppress. Then, his soul was stabbed, and his strength was limited by no less than half. With a cold glint in his eyes, Su Yu held the underworld pearl in his hand and blasted it through the air. However, even in pain, Qi Ming was a stage 4 all creation's old monster, and he decisively teleported away to avoid the blow. But just as he was about to avoid it, tens of thousands of blood threads suddenly wrapped around his body. It was Whitey, who had been hiding underground for some time, turning into countless blood threads. "Get out of here!" Qi Ming shouted, and his body shook violently, breaking the blood threads that wrapped around his body. The continent below was also shattered, revealing the rock layers hidden deep underground. But what was shocking was that the entire Earth had already been covered by a sea of blood that covered hundreds of thousands of miles. The sea of blood was condensed from dense blood threads. The blood threads that Qi Ming broke were just a drop in the ocean. "Haha, old bastard, taste the comfort of Whitey's love." Deep underground, there was Whitey's strange laughter. Suddenly, the ground of hundreds of thousands of miles shattered, revealing a huge sea of blood. Endless blood threads covered the sky and covered the earth. From the bottom to the top, they soared into the sky. Qi Ming's eyelids twitched. These blood threads were not a threat to him, but if he was entangled, it would be difficult to get rid of them in a short time. Making a prompt decision, Qi Ming smashed the void in all directions with his palm, preparing to escape into the void and escape. But at this moment, a ray of wine-red light came from behind, and the huge power of space disrupted the power of space around him. The shattered void crack immediately changed shape, as if it was about to shatter. This kind of chaotic space, even if it was an all-creation's old monster, it would be difficult to survive. If one space did not work, his right hand smashed another space. But there was a moment of stagnation between the two. The sea of blood took the opportunity to rush up, and countless blood threads condensed into a wall, blocking the newly opened space crack. "You have a death wish." Qi Ming was a little anxious. He dispelled the sword energy in his body and pulled out the soul-piercing needle. He was confident that he could come back and easily crush them all. But now was not the time to force a fight. A roar, like thunder, shook the countless blood threads and broke them apart. However, the number of blood threads was endless. One after another, they surged up, sinking him into the vast sea of blood threads. Not to mention destroying all the blood threads, he could not even teleport away from this place. Seeing this scene, Zheng Qinglong gasped. In less than a dozen breaths, Qi Ming was at a disadvantage. "Father, who exactly is this man? Didn't you say that he was the demon who was inferior to you? How?" Zheng Xing stared at Su Yu's figure, shocked beyond words. They were both of the younger generation, but with such strength, he was completely unqualified to catch up. Chapter 1067. The methods that Su Yu had used were all new ones that had never been seen before, and the effects were amazing. In the sea of blood, Qi Ming's heart sank. If he continued to be entangled, he would eventually use up his all-creation power. Once his all-creation power was insufficient, the sword energy in his body would explode from the inside out, cutting him to pieces, and he would be dead. This could not go on. But it was easier said than done to escape the sea of blood. If he was at his peak, he could easily escape. Now that his strength was restricted, he could not do as he wished. But if he let it go, the consequences would be even worse. After weighing the pros and cons, Qi Ming gritted his teeth and made a decision. With a flash of light, Qi Ming shook off the blood wrapping around his body and stared at Su Yu. "You forced me to do this." Layers of black scales gradually appeared on the surface of his body, and his face gradually turned pitch black. A pair of pitch-black horns grew on his forehead, and his pupils emitted a deep, murky yellow light. His hands were also shaped like sharp claws. Even behind him, a long tail grew. Seeing this, Zheng Qinglong's expression changed. He did not hesitate to use the all-creation primordial spirit to cast the dragon transformation technique. Su Yu's heart moved. He had heard rumors about the dragon transformation technique from ancient times. Some ancient humans, in order to break through the shackles of all creation, would choose to imitate the powerful creatures of heaven and earth and transform their own bodies to achieve a breakthrough. In fact, the heaven-devouring demonic eye between Su Yu's eyebrows was one of the products of that era. The principle of the dragon transformation technique was very similar. It also transplanted the blood, flesh, or other parts of a real dragon to achieve the purpose of transforming the body. Once activated, one could transform into a half-dragon form, and his strength would soar. Of course, the price was very high. First of all, the body of a real dragon cost an astronomical number of crystals. Only a few people in the Jiuzhou continent could afford it. Secondly, every time it was activated, it consumed not ordinary power, but the all-creation primordial spirit. Similar to the fairies' dantian, the Almighty's fetal crystal, the primordial spirit was the foundation of the all-creation old monsters. A slight injury could affect them for the rest of their lives. If it was not necessary, absolutely no one would be willing to use it rashly. Zheng Qinglong never thought that Qi Ming would be forced to this point. If he were to put himself in their shoes, he wouldn't have a second path to take. If he didn't do this, he would really fall into the tragic fate of ants biting an elephant to death. Dragon's roar! Qi Ming, who was in his half-dragon form, roared with a sinister smile. The shocking sound waves radiated in all directions. The sea of blood that got close was like a piece of paper in the face of fire, quickly annihilated. The silver puppet deep underground let out a miserable shriek. Countless blood vessels rapidly shrank, and the sea of blood vanished in the blink of an eye. All that was left was a dying silver puppet crawling out of the ground. Compared to the previous silvery white color, his entire body was dim, and there were many cracks on his body. He had suffered a dragon's roar at such a close distance and was severely injured. His current battle prowess is at the brink of the 5th stage all creations, Zheng Qinglong said, his face full of bitterness. He could no longer see any hope of victory. Swish, swish. After transforming into a half-dragon, the sword chi within his body was forcefully spat out along with a dragon roar. A black needle was forced out from his pitch-black forehead. Little bastard! Are you ready to force me to damage my own primordial spirit? Qi Ming was ferocious, his voice mixed with the roar of a wild beast. Who knew how long it would take for him to recover his primordial spirit? He had thought it would be an easy mission, but he had to pay such a huge price. How could he vent his hatred if he did not kill Su Yu? Yes, I'm ready. Su Yu looked at Qi Ming calmly and nodded. Such a response stunned Qi Ming, until Su Yu finished his sentence. I'm ready to send you on your way. Creak. Suddenly, the space behind Qi Ming split open, and an underworld pearl wrapped in the power of space flew out from it. The appearance of the underworld pearl caught him off guard. Even Qi Ming did not expect it. It turned out that the underworld pearl that was thrown out earlier was a diversion to make him relax his vigilance. The underworld pearl was wrapped in the power of space, ready to strike at any time. The underworld pearl came crashing down from behind. Qi Ming roared, turned around with difficulty, and slammed out with his scale-covered hands. Bang, bang. There were two muffled sounds as Qi Ming was shaken by the power of the underworld pearl. But what was even more shocking was that the underworld pearl was forced back by him. Last time, Lin Lang had easily caught the underworld pearl in her hand. This time, the dragonized Qi Ming, with all his might, managed to blast the underworld pearl away. It seemed that the 5th stage all-creation realm was the limit of the underworld pearl's pressure. Su Yu felt the pressure. The dragonized Qi Ming was many times stronger than before. They were on two different levels. Qi Ming stopped shaking, and his yellow eyes were filled with hostility. Boy, no more moves? Die. Yes, Su Yu said calmly. Su Yu said calmly. After thinking for a short while, he took out a completely black magic wand. There were 4 distinct cracks on it, and it seemed like it was about to shatter. the glittering jewel fairy scepter. He grabbed it with one hand and infused it with vital energy. The dark magic staff immediately emitted invisible waves and disappeared into the void. The strange waves passed through everyone silently. Jing Qinglong, Jing Xing, Qiuren, Qi Ming. Qi Ming suddenly felt that something was wrong. He wanted to avoid the waves, and tried to tear the void and hide in it. However, even though he was in the void, the ripples were not affected at all. Qi Ming, who prided himself on being knowledgeable, could not help but be horrified. What was this thing? What was that wave? Soon, he understood. The waves entered his body, and the surface of his body began to change. The black horns on the top of his head, the black scales on the surface of his body, the tail on his back, all fell off. At the same time, a mass of dragon bones hidden in his abdomen also disappeared inexplicably. He degenerated from his half-dragon form back to his human form. This was the role of the glittering jewel fairy scepter, purification. It purified him from a state of being neither human nor dragon into a pure human state. Of course, the primordial spirit he had lost and his injuries could not be purified. In other words, his primordial spirit was greatly damaged in exchange for showing off his half-dragon body. The price of this show was too heavy. My dragon body! Qi Ming stared at his human body in shock. He could not believe that the dragonization technique that he had paid such a high price to complete had been purified just like that. Buzz, buzz. Suddenly, 3 tiny cracks appeared around Qi Ming. The cracks shone with silver light, swallowing and spitting out silver sword energy. The formation was finally successful. Qi Ming recovered from his shock. His eyes narrowed as he instinctively felt the great danger. He said in a low voice, "Sword formation? You still have this skill?" For some reason, before the sword formation had even been activated, he felt a sense of fear. "This is to send you on your way," Su Yu said calmly, his hands forming a seal to mobilize the sword formation. The void was torn apart, revealing the true appearance of the 3 silver swords. They were 3 long silver swords. The silver swords shuttled through the void and completed a turn in an instant. If it had not been for the remaining silver sword shadows, it would have been difficult to discover that the sword formation had been activated once. Qi Ming's heart, eyebrows, and abdomen, each of the 3 major vital points, had a gradually expanding blood mark. When he had dealt with the glittering jewel mortal fairy, he had chosen to attack her vital points in order to prevent inadvertently hurting Bing Wuxin. As for Qi Ming, of course, he did not receive such good treatment. 3 swords, each one fatal. His heart was pierced by a sword, his soul was broken by a sword, and his primordial spirit was pierced by a sword. Moreover, these were injuries that could not be healed unless he had the power of a mortal fairy. Qi Ming was flustered, trying to repair his injuries, but to no avail. He shouted in panic, What sword is this? No. The increasingly serious injuries caused Qi Ming to quickly sink into the death swamp. His all-creation's mighty force left his body like a river, and his soul gradually disappeared. His body became heavier and heavier, and Qi Ming finally panicked. He was going to die. "Brother Jing, save me, I was wrong, please. He begged Jing Qinglong before he died, but all he got was a look of indifference from Jing Qinglong. Qiu'er looked at him with a complicated expression. She could not change Su Yu's will. Until he could no longer bear the weight of his body, Qi Ming fell from the sky and hit the ground heavily, completely unconscious. Glancing at him, Su Yu murmured, "Since you have cut off your ties, how can you talk about pleading?" The 3 silver swords flew back into the sword case on Su Yu's back. Su Yu took a deep breath. Using the tri-solar sword formation once consumed an astonishing amount of mental energy. Deep exhaustion came with drowsiness. With a strong mental energy, Su Yu came to Qi Ming and took his storage ring. As the second-ranked deputy region master, his net worth must be extremely high. Su Yu's eyes lit up when he saw that there were 700 or 800 million crystals in it. This was a huge windfall. There were also many resources that one could wish for. Finally, Su Yu found a broken scroll that described the process of a human evolving into a half-dragon. The method was described in detail, and the process was clear. Dragon transformation technique? Su Yu's eyes lit up again. After Qi Ming had transformed into a dragon, his strength had skyrocketed. Su Yu had a deep impression of him. And Su Yu himself had a body of dragon veins. Could he also complete the transformation? But there was no time to think about it now. Su Yu collected all the items. How are your injuries? Su Yu looked at Jing Qinglong after cleaning up the battlefield. Being looked at by Su Yu like this, Jing Qinglong felt some pressure. Now it was time to deal with them. Jing Qinglong was still a member of the Heavenly Knife region, but Su Yu was a member of the Red Blood Palace. Please don't hurt my father. Jing Xing came over and stood in front of his father, facing Su Yu. But Jing Qinglong gently pushed him away and sighed. If he wanted to hurt me, why wait until now? Sheng give him the pearl I gave you at the wedding. Although Jing Xing did not understand, he felt that it was inappropriate. After all, this was a symbol of his and Qiu Er's marriage. But without much hesitation, he placed a huge pearl the size of a palm in Su Yu's palm. What you want is in here, Jing Qinglong said. What Su Yu wanted was naturally the account book. Here. Su Yu really did not expect that Jing Qinglong would put the account book in the pearl, and then give it to his son as a treasure in front of everyone. Su Yu could not help but laugh bitterly at such a move. Chapter 1068. Crack. Su Yu crushed the pearl in his hand, revealing a sheepskin scroll filled with characters of the human clan and the ghost clan. On it were the signatures of Jing Qinglong, the Heavenly Knife Region Master, and the Ghost Clan. This account book was enough to kill the Heavenly Knife Region Master. The one who came to deal with him must be a prefecture king. Mr. Su, I advise you to give this account book to Mo Tianxian and stop meddling in this matter. The secrets involved are not something you and I can meddle with. Only the prefecture king can solve it. Maybe one prefecture king is not enough. The situation is more serious than you expected. Jing Qinglong said seriously, although I did not directly participate in the negotiations with the ghost race, I can speculate that the number of ghosts lurking in Jiuzhou is beyond imagination from years of resource support. It is even possible that the gate to the ghost prison has been opened. Especially in the last year, the resources supported are 10 times more than before. The sudden increase is enough to explain something. That is, 10 times more ghosts have come to Jiuzhou. Hearing his words, Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He had always thought that the ghost race active in Jiuzhou were mostly the remnants of the defeated army from 100 years ago. But now Su Yu pondered for a long time. He could not help but open the account book and analyze the quantity, grade, and quality of the resources obtained by the ghost race over the years. However, the more he read, the more shocked he became. The resources in Jing Qinglong's mansion were just the tip of the iceberg. The resource transactions recorded in the account book were an astronomical figure. The resources of the Heavenly Knife region for 100 years were nothing more than this. From 100 years ago, the Heavenly Knife region began to prepare resources for the ghost race. Strangely, this process was not discovered by anyone, and no traces were left behind. How could there be no traces left after 100 years of collecting materials from the ghost race? Jiuzhou should be very sensitive to the ghost race. It was even more memorable than the distant demon race. How could no one notice it? There was only one explanation. There was an invisible hand manipulating behind the scenes to cover up the matter. There was only one person who had such ability and was willing to help the Heavenly Knife region master. The Central Prefecture's king. Others might not know, but how could Su Yu not know the cause of Shinichen's death? The Central Prefecture's king had a long history of colluding with the ghost race. It was completely reasonable for him to order the Heavenly Knife region to store resources for the ghost race in the past 100 years. Suyu couldn't help but suspect that the Heavenly Knife region wasn't the only one involved. Among the 5 regions of the Central Prefecture, apart from the Blessed and Heavenly Lands, the other regions could be involved as well. These are really troubled times. The appearance of the glittering jewel mortal fairy is not enough, and now the ghost race has appeared. Suyu frowned deeply. According to the account book, the ghost race had already stationed troops somewhere on the continent, waiting for an opportunity to stage a comeback. The 9 states that had lost the royal beast state, coupled with the fact that their strength was not as great as it was 100 years ago, boded ill rather than well. Moreover, the glittering jewel mortal fairy would never let go of this opportunity to devour people's hearts and souls. Suyu's heart was heavy. Is it really time for Jiuzhou to be destroyed? Looking at the account book, Suyu planned to immediately hand it over to Mo Tianxian and inform all the prefecture's kings. This was even more troublesome than the glittering jewel mortal fairy. However, when Suyu closed the account book, his gaze swept over the Ghost Clan's signature, and he couldn't help but be startled. He paused and observed the signature carefully. Suyu was proficient in many clans' languages, and the Ghost Clan's language was one of them. And the Ghost Clan's signature, if translated into human words, would be "It's him?" Suyu's pupils constricted. He was surprised but also relieved. I see, then everything makes sense. Jing Qinglong, who was listening at the side, couldn't help but frown. Mr. Su, have you discovered something? Suyu pointed his finger at the Ghost Clan signature in the account book, and said with mixed feelings, "Yes, the Ghost Clan's signature might be an old friend of mine." Right at that moment, cracks suddenly appeared all around them. The crack right in front of them was the largest, and a pitch-black skeleton ship flew out from it. At the bow of the ship was a gentle and refined young man with a golden mask on his back. "It seems that Brother Su has discovered it after all," the golden-masked man said with a smile. Behind him were 80 bronze corpses, each of which had the strength of Stage 1 all creations. The memory of their joint attack on the glittering jewel mortal fairy was still fresh in his mind. Moreover, there was more than one similar skeleton ship. From all directions, no less than 10 ships flew out one after another. Each ship was billowing with ghost energy, and indistinctly, one could see bronze corpses standing upright in the ghost energy. There were as many as 1,000 of them. Moreover, at the bow of each ghost ship, there was a creature sitting cross-legged, opening up space for the ghost ship. Among them, Suyu raised his eyebrows when he saw an unusually familiar figure. Manor Master Zhang. Suyu stared at him, surprised, but felt that it was reasonable. "Or should I call you the blood-bone great soldier?" Manor Master Zhang slowly opened his eyes, which were filled with cruelty and ferocity. "Haha, long time no see. You still remember me." Back then, it was Suyu who exposed him, which led to his escape from Yuling Mountain. Suyu smiled nonchalantly, then turned to look at another familiar handsome man behind the great soldier of blood-bone. "It's been a long time. Senior Brother Renyao." Suyu stared at the man with a complicated look in his eyes. Tian Renyao, one of the 4 great demons of the Demon Mountain. When he was carrying out a mission with Bai Shanliang, they were ambushed by the Ghost Clan, and their whereabouts were unknown. But now it seemed that the ambush was full of doubts. No one knew their route except for themselves and Mo Tianxian, but they were ambushed so accurately. Bai Shanliang had asserted that there must be a traitor among them. He had speculated about the several elders who accompanied them, but he had never guessed about Tian Renyao. He had thought that he had died in an accident, but now it seemed that the truth was really surprising. "You already knew that I was the traitor, didn't you?" Tian Renyao's handsome face showed a look of emotion. Suyu said lightly, "So, Senior Sister Tianyu's words have reached your ears." "Yes, I have. Thank you for your concern, junior brother." Tian Renyao seemed to be talking about a trivial matter. He and Tianyu were brother and sister. The two people who seemed to have no relationship actually had such a hidden relationship? In fact, Suyu had been speculating since the first time he saw Tianyu. Tian Renyao was a man, but he liked men. Tianyu was a woman, but she was a woman who valued relationship. The two of them had the same surname, Tian. It would be too much of a coincidence to say that the two of them had no special relationship. When Tianyu betrayed the enemy, Suyu had guessed that there was more to the ambush that Tian Renyao and Bai Shanliang had suffered. Now it seemed that it was true. Haha, there are quite a few familiar faces here, Suyu chuckled. He didn't know the rest of the people on the skeleton ship, but Zheng Qinglong knew them. His eyes swept over them one after another, full of bitterness. Except for the great Deputy Region Master, all the Deputy Region Masters of the Heavenly Knife region are here, right? It turned out that the people sitting at the bow of the ship were the other Deputy Region Masters. The great Deputy Region Master, however, was exceptionally mysterious. He didn't show up all year round, and even they rarely saw him. Brother Su, you are brimming with talent, like a comet streaking across the continent. If such a talent joins the ghost prison, he will surely achieve great things. Why should you submit to the declining Jiuzhou? Bai Lingtian said gently, admitting his identity as a member of the ghost race. He also indirectly admitted that the signature of the ghost race on the account was Bai Lingtian's. No wonder he was the nominal disciple of the Heavenly Knife Region Master, but there was a gap between him and the other disciples of the Heavenly Knife Region Master, Qian Feng. Being a disciple was just a facade. It was more convenient to negotiate, wasn't it? An orange is a tangerine when born in Huainan, and a tangerine when born in Huaibei. After joining the ghost prison, will I be a human or a ghost? Suyu faced the suffocating army calmly. Bai Lingtian smiled gently as usual. If that's the case, it's a pity. If Brother Su hasn't looked through the account, I don't mind letting you leave. The great Emperor admires an outstanding talent like you very much. Unfortunately, it's too late. Are you really not going to consider joining the ghost prison? Suyu fell silent. You've just gone through a great battle, and you've even used your trump card, the Tri-Solar Sword Formation. You don't have any energy left to fight with us, do you? Why force yourself? Bai Lingtian sighed. Powerful enemies surrounded him, and pairs of eyes focused on him. Suyu looked calm as he shook his head gently. I've made up my mind. I'm taking the account book with me, and I'm leaving with the person. Bai Lingtian stared at Suyu deeply. Do you think you can leave? How do you know that after half a year I still have the trump card from that day? A confident smile appeared at the corners of Suyu's mouth, and a mysterious aura flowed around him. All of a sudden, a huge wine-red eye appeared in the sky. The eye was extremely huge, with a circumference of hundreds of thousands of miles. Standing beneath it, it was difficult to see the entire eye's original appearance. The scene was shocking and unforgettable. Even Zheng Qinglong was taken aback by the sight. Is this your divine path? Bai Lingtian asked hesitantly. The eye was more than twice as big as the one he displayed in the glittering jewel wonderland, and it gave off an obviously different vibe. In the past, it gave off a faint destructive energy, but now it was a completely different feeling. Space vortex, Suyu said placidly. All of a sudden, a pitch-black vortex the size of a sesame seed appeared in the middle of the pupil of the giant wine-red eye. It was a vortex formed after the space was torn apart. Once sucked into it, it was highly likely that one would be swept to a faraway place. At first, they didn't understand the significance of this faint vortex. It was only when the edge of the vortex kept expanding, rapidly expanding from the size of a sesame seed to a tenth of the eye's size, that they realized something was amiss. Is he going to create a space vortex of 100,000 miles in circumference? The fourth Deputy Region Master stared at the rapidly expanding vortex in astonishment and said with uncertainty, I don't think so. Can such a huge vortex be created by the peak pure divine decree alone? As if in response to their words, the vortex rapidly expanded to cover a circumference of 30,000 miles. Looking up, it was as if someone had blasted a huge hole in the sky and was about to collapse. The shocking phenomenon made everyone's scalp tingle. Looking at the rapidly expanding space vortex, they finally grew solemn. He can't be serious, can he? If this goes on, is he going to swallow the entire continent of 100,000 miles in circumference? As the whirlpool covered the area, the mountains that had never changed since ancient times were sucked into it. The long rivers looked like silver-white dragons being sucked into the whirlpool. No one could sit still. The continent of 100,000 miles of mountains and rivers was separated from the land of Jiuzhou with the sound of mountains collapsing and the earth cracking. It was absorbed by the immense power of space and floated away from the center of the vortex. Their 10 skeleton ships were also sucked in by the shocking space vortex, spinning uncontrollably like leaves as they were sucked into the center of the vortex. The people on the ships turned pale with fright and did their best to control the skeleton ships to stabilize themselves. However, they were completely powerless to resist the completely formed space vortex of 100,000 miles in circumference. Looking from afar, a pitch-black hole in the shape of an eye appeared in the sky. It could no longer be described as a space crack, but a sky crack. A piece of the sky crack was missing. The shocking scene made people feel as if they were in a dream. Quickly jump off the ship. Quickly! In the skeleton ships, they finally scattered in all directions, abandoning the skeleton ships and choosing to use their individual strength to forcefully escape the vortex. Chapter 1069. Only a few figures managed to forcefully resist the great suction force of the space vortex and escaped the range of the vortex. Most of the skeleton ships and the copper corpses on them were not spared. As the entire continent was swallowed up, the swirling spatial vortex in the gap in the sky gradually calmed down. Then, the huge gap in the sky slowly repaired itself. Those who survived the calamity lowered their heads and looked at the ground beneath them, and all of them felt a chill in their hearts. Where was the so-called Earth? Hundreds of thousands of continents were devoured, and all that was left was boiling lava that reached deep into the ground. Only peak-stage all-adepts were capable of destroying the heavens and destroying the earth. Suyu, a strong man of the divine path, had played it down. On the devastated land, only one of the 10 warships remained, as well as a few people who had not been swept away. On the skeleton warship, Bai Lingtian was still standing at the bow. His expression could not be seen under the golden mask, but his astonished eyes could be seen clearly. "Young master, what should we do? 9 warships, Copper Corps, and 5 deputy region masters are missing." The blood-bone great general was lucky enough to stay behind. His eyelids twitched as he looked at the horrifying scene. Bai Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief after sensing for a while. "They're not dead. They've just been teleported to a very faraway place. With the skeleton ship traversing through the void, it'll only take them 5 to 6 days to return." When he looked at Suyu again, Bai Lingtian smiled bitterly. "Brother Su, you're still the same. You always surprise people with unexpected surprises. Your divine path is really exaggerated. You flatter me. Do you still have the confidence to keep me here?" Suyu asked calmly. Bai Lingtian was speechless. If it were 1,000 bronze corpses, he wouldn't even be afraid of the glittering jewel mortal fairy. But now only he, the blood-bone great general, the Stage 3 All Creation's 4th Deputy Region Master, the Second Father All Creation's 5th Deputy Region Master, and Tian Renyao were left. As for the other party, they had Su Yu and Jing Qinglong. The latter alone could suppress the blood-bone great general, the 4th Deputy Region Master, the 5th Deputy Region Master, and Tian Renyao. As for Su Yu, Bai Lingtian had his own trump card, but after witnessing Su Yu's uncanny divine path, he gradually lost his confidence. Because Su Yu's divine path had yet to be fully displayed, Bai Lingtian sank into deep thought. Fighting to the death is probably out of the question. But if he gave up now, the ghost race on the continent would be exposed. After a while, he did something that surprised Su Yu. "I'll leave this matter to you to decide." Bai Ling Tian took a step forward and stood in front of Tian Renyao. He looked at him at the same level, as if they were on equal footing. Su Yu squinted his eyes. Judging from the situation, it didn't seem like Tian Renyao had simply sought refuge with the Ghost Clan. At first, when he stood behind the blood-bone great general, he thought that he had surrendered and become his servant. But looking at it now, it didn't seem to be the case. Moreover, what surprised Su Yu the most was that apart from the unfathomable Bai Lingtian, who was a powerful all-creation's old monster, Tian Renyao's power seemed mediocre, wasn't it? How did he stay? In the chaos just now, everyone could only protect themselves. No one could protect him. Does he have the power to resist the spatial vortex alone? Come to think of it, Su Yu had never seen him fight. The four great demons of the Demon Mountain, Gongsun Wuxie, Bing Wuxin, and even Bai Shanliang, had all fought side by side. Tian Renyao was the only one. Apart from the occasional transformation and mischief, Su Yu had never seen him fight. Because of his special hobbies, people stayed away from him. Almost no one was willing to talk about him or pay attention to him. His true power had always been a blind spot that had been overlooked. Looking at the blood-bone great general again, the way he looked at Tian Renyao was filled with respect. Could it be that Tian Renyao was standing behind him not because he was a servant, but because he was being protected by the blood-bone great general? The real servant was the blood-bone great general. Thinking of this, Su Yu was horrified. Tian Renyao was a hidden big shot. After the chaos, Tian Renyao's whole body was clean and neat. His soft long hair was not messed up. He looked calm and composed, as if he was not affected by what had just happened. He stood up slowly. His handsome figure was dazzling, and his body exuded a special aura. "Fine, before that person shows himself, I can't attack for the time being. Let's bring forward the plan to attack the Jiuzhou continent." He said this casually, as if he was the highest commander of the ghost race in Jiuzhou. Bai Lingtian nodded. "Yes, the preparations are almost done. I've been preparing for this battle for 100 years. I'm really looking forward to it." Smiling, Bai Lingtian and Tian Renyao looked at Su Yu together. Bai Lingtian was silent while Tian Renyao sighed. "We are fellow disciples of the same faction. I hope you and I don't meet on the battlefield. Besides, don't go back to the faction. The Red Blood Palace is our first target." When he finished, Tian Renyao waved his sleeves and swept up the whole skeleton ship. He crossed the void and left, leaving behind a hollow echo. Hearing this, Su Yu's face changed dramatically. The first to attack the Red Blood Palace? Where was the ghost army? Had it always been in the Red Blood Palace's territory? His heart sank. He took out the wooden bird and prepared to teleport. "Mr. Su, I'll go with you." Zheng Qinglong leaped onto the wooden bird. Su Yu shook his head. "No, the Red Blood Palace may be in danger. It's very risky for you to go with me. I'm worried that you won't be able to hold on until we return to the Red Blood Palace." Zheng Qinglong sighed softly and stared at Su Yu with a complicated look. "You're almost at your limit, aren't you?" Sure enough, Su Yu's seemingly normal face finally couldn't hide the paleness on it. His body was trembling. If Zheng Qinglong hadn't held his shoulder in time, he would have fallen to the ground. First, he had to deal with Qi Ming and risk using his trump card, the trisolar sword formation. His mental strength was severely depleted. In fact, Su Yu was almost at his limit and needed to rest immediately. However, he didn't expect to be followed by such a large group of pursuers. At the critical moment, Su Yu risked using the latest fusion divine path and displayed the earth-shattering devouring vision. It finally played a deterrent role and scared them away. The power of the fusion divine path was amazing, but so was the price. His mental strength was exhausted, and he almost suffered a fundamental injury. At this moment, Su Yu was forcing himself to stay calm. He had no strength to fight anymore. If they saw through him, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, the outcome now wasn't any better. The Ghost Clan had made a comeback. "Thank you, 3rd Deputy Region Master, for sending me to Tianya City. They should have an emergency way to contact the Red Blood Palace," Su Yu said in a low voice. He had to give the Red Blood Palace enough time to retreat. "All right." Jing Qinglong rolled up his sleeves and took his son and daughter-in-law with him. The next moment, they appeared in Tianya City. "Greetings, Master Su." Xiao Han and Wu Ling rushed over. Seeing Su Yu's expression, they turned pale with fright, wondering if Su Yu had encountered a strong enemy. "Do you have an emergency way to send a message to the faction?" Su Yu landed on the wooden bird and asked immediately. Xiao Han realized that the situation wasn't good. He said solemnly, "Of course we do, but this place is far from the faction. Using it once costs 100 middle-grade crystals. Therefore, the faction has a rule that unless it's an extremely important matter, it can't be used rashly. Master Su, could it be that you didn't find the account book, and instead alerted them, causing the Heavenly Knife region to prepare for a large-scale invasion? If it's such a serious matter, it's time to use an emergency message." Su Yu shook his head, his face solemn. "I've got the account book, and the prefecture's king will come to deal with them. The war between the Blessed and Heavenly Lands and the Heavenly Knife region has come to an end." Xiao Han was startled and overjoyed, but then his heart sank. Even though the war had been resolved, they still needed to use an emergency message. Could it be something more serious than an all-out war between the two regions? What's the message about? As the cabinet master, he naturally had to clarify. "The ghost race is back, and their first target is the Red Blood Palace," Su Yu said. "The ghost race is back?" Xiao Han's throat seemed to be blocked by something, and he couldn't speak. He had been fortunate enough to experience the Great War of the Ghost Race 100 years ago, and that tragedy was still unforgettable. Wait, why is the Red Blood Palace the first target? Xiao Han's heart was heavy. Su Yu said, "I'm confused too, but there's no time. Please inform the Red Blood Palace quickly." Su Yu didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling about this. Since Tianrenyao wanted to launch an attack on the Red Blood Palace, why did he tell Su Yu and give the Red Blood Palace time to prepare? There was no time to lose. Xiao Han dared not delay such an important matter. He immediately went to the depths of the pavilion and activated the emergency message in the heavily guarded secret room. After an hour, there was no reply from the transportation portal. This is strange. If Palace Mistress Mo had received the message, she would have sent an emergency message to inquire about the details. Why hasn't there been a reply after so long? Xiao Han frowned, feeling extremely anxious. Su Yu said, "May I ask if the emergency message was sent directly to Mo Tianxian?" "No, it was sent to Palace Mistress Mo's secret training room. If Palace Mistress Mo happened to be presiding over a meeting, or if she had other matters to attend to, a similar situation might occur." The bad feeling grew stronger. "3rd Deputy Region Master, can you take me to the Red Blood Palace? I want to go back to the faction myself," Su Yu said. Jing Qinglong nodded without hesitation. "You saved my life. What's the harm in accompanying you?" However, he put Jing Xing and Qiu'er down. "Cabinet Master Xiao Han, please take care of them for me." He also had a premonition that the Red Blood Palace would not be peaceful. "Of course," Xiao Han said. "Master Su, if Palace Mistress Mo needs help, please inform our Tianya City branch. We are willing to rush back to the faction and live and die with it." Su Yu nodded, thought for a moment and said, "There is one thing I hope Cabinet Master Xiao Han can help me with." "Please speak," Xiao Han said solemnly. Su Yu's lips moved and he used a secret technique to transmit his voice into Xiao Han's ears. Xiao Han was startled and his expression changed. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded and agreed. Don't worry, I will do it well for you, Master Su. Without another word, Zheng Qinglong took action, breaking through the void with Su Yu, and headed straight for the Red Blood Palace. Central Prefecture, Imperial Palace. In the shadows of a corner, the sound of chewing flesh could be heard, and the thick smell of blood assaulted their nostrils. It's not enough. These are the hearts and souls of ordinary all creation's strong men. They can't even recover from their previous injuries. A hoarse voice came from the shadows. Chapter 1070. Then, summon the region masters into the palace. Their hearts and souls are far more powerful than ordinary all creation realm expert. The Central Prefecture's king said hesitantly, if the region masters were sacrificed, he would be the only commander left in the Central Prefecture. Moreover, the all-creation realm old monsters had disappeared after entering the palace, so he could deceive the world with the excuse that they were in the middle of their studies. However, if even the region masters disappeared after entering the palace, even a fool would know that there was something wrong with the Central Prefecture's palace, and it would be exposed sooner or later. At that time, the Central Prefecture's king would have no foothold in the Jiuzhou continent. It's just a prefecture. What's there to miss? When I recover, I will take you back to the demon dimension. At this time, the Central Prefecture's king received a communication jade pendant. After reading it, his face darkened slightly. Rubbish! What's the matter? The Central Prefecture's king said helplessly. A group of rubbish exposed the Ghost Army, and the Ghost Army was forced to take action in advance. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. Deal with this matter quickly, the Central Prefecture's king said. The existence in the shadow, who had a keen perception, said lightly, You seem to be in a hurry. Yes, the ghost race is an important pawn of my plan for 100 years. Whether I can become the Jiuzhou Emperor from a mere prefecture's king or not depends on this plan. However, the existence in the shadow snorted coldly, I don't want you to lie to me. What you are anxious about is another matter. The Central Prefecture's king rolled his eyes slightly and nodded slowly. Master, to be honest, I do have another urgent matter, which is to kill a person. This person has an irreconcilable hatred with me, and I must kill him. The shadow in the corner was silent for a moment, but he did not ask further. As a dignified prefecture's king, who could have an irreconcilable hatred with him? Okay, go ahead. The Central Prefecture's king nodded, turned around and stepped out of the hall with a faint smile on his face. Su Yu, I have come to fulfill my promise. You have kept my divine nine-dragon cauldron for too long. He was so anxious to kill Su Yu because the invasion of the Ghost Army had completely disrupted the situation in the Central Prefecture. If Su Yu died in the war, his body would be lost, and the divine nine-dragon cauldron would be buried forever. Before leaving, he told Zhan Wushuang, the ghost race, you arrange everything according to the plan. Zhan Wushuang snorted. While traveling through the void, Su Yu suddenly panicked. The divine nine-dragon cauldron in the depths of his soul trembled without warning, as if it was warning Su Yu of something. What's wrong? Jing Qinglong noticed that Su Yu was acting strangely. Su Yu shook his head. It's nothing. Someone I'll meet soon is on his way here. Jing Qinglong was bewildered by the baffling words. At that moment, after half a day, they finally arrived at the outer sanctum of the Red Blood Palace. After stepping out of the void, Jing Qinglong had a strange look on his face and looked deeply at Su Yu. After a long time, he sighed softly. We are too late. The once flourishing outer sect had been razed to the ground. Broken fences and broken walls could be seen everywhere. The earth was scorched, and the magnificent palaces and pavilions that were once engraved with dragons and phoenixes had all become ruins. Only 1 or 2 places were left where the original appearance could be vaguely recognized. One was the carp leaping over the Dragon Gate Pagoda, the other was the Demon Mountain. Go to the inner sanctum, Su Yu said. However, what made Su Yu's face sink was that the inner sanctum had also been reduced to ashes. It was even more thorough than the outer sect. How could this be? Jing Qinglong shook his head in confusion. This doesn't make sense. From the time we received the news to the time we arrived at the Red Blood Palace, only half a day has passed. Could the ghost race have launched an attack in half a day? Could it be that the ghost clan is near the Red Blood Palace? They didn't launch an attack in half a day, but the moment we received the news, the Red Blood Palace was destroyed, Su Yu said in a low voice. He pointed a finger at one of the ruins. Above the ruins, a jade pendant was spinning continuously, emitting a striking fluorescent light. That ruin was where Mo Tianxuan's secret training room was located. That jade pendant was undoubtedly an emergency message from Tianya City. No wonder Mo Tianxian didn't receive it. Turned out that the Red Blood Palace had been destroyed before the message arrived. This is impossible. It wasn't long before we received the news and sent the emergency message. Could the ghost race be in the Red Blood Palace? Jing Qinglong found the destruction of the Red Blood Palace unbelievable. You're right, the ghost race did appear in the Red Blood Palace. A familiar sigh floated into Su Yu and Jing Qinglong's ears. Su Yu knew who it was without turning his head. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, "True man of the purple cloud, please enlighten me." The person who came was the true man of the purple cloud, who had led the strong men of the Purple Cloud Palace to rescue them. He and the people behind him were all somewhat injured. It seemed that they had arrived in time to rescue them, but unfortunately they were powerless. It's exactly what it says. The ghost race suddenly appeared from the depths of the Red Blood Palace and caught the Red Blood Palace by surprise. The ghost race army was hiding deep under the Red Blood Palace? If the person who spoke was not the true man of the purple cloud, Su Yu wouldn't even have cared. How could the ghost race army be hiding under the Red Blood Palace? This was too absurd. You'll know when you see for yourself. The true man flicked his sleeves, and the ruins of the inner palace were swept away by an amazing all-creation's mighty force, digging 3 feet into the ground out of thin air. 3 feet underground, a pitch-black hole that covered the entire area of the inner palace was revealed. It was eerie and led to the endless depths of the earth. Gusts of gloomy, ghostly wind whistled and blew, making people shudder. How could this be? Su Yu was lost in thought. He had only been to the inner palace a few times, so he didn't know much about it. But there was such a huge cave under the inner palace, which sounded incredible no matter how he thought about it. Had he never noticed it before? Even if others hadn't, could Mo Tianxian not have noticed it? Where are the students of the Red Blood Palace? All kinds of strange things made Su Yu think quickly. The true man of the purple cloud shook his head with a bitter smile. This is what I don't understand the most. When I came, I only saw the shadows of the ghost race, and then I fought with them. As for the students of the Red Blood Palace, as you can see, not even a corpse was seen. This was the strangest thing. The Red Blood Palace was destroyed, and the students were nowhere to be seen, not even their corpses. In the ruins, there were no remnants of blood, broken limbs, or anything like that, and there were no signs of a great battle. The ghost race has made a comeback, and their first target is the blessed and heavenly land. They are indeed well prepared. Do they pick themselves up from where they fell? The true man laughed bitterly. 100 years ago, the blessed and heavenly lands was the final place of the final battle between the humans and the ghost. Shen Yichen led the human race and defeated the ghost race, forcing them to retreat to the ghost prison. Now, the ghost race had returned to the world, which was a great catastrophe for the Jiuzhou continent. What about the army of the ghost race? Jing Qinglong asked. The true man of the purple cloud pointed in the direction of the central prefecture. Their first target is the central city, and with the central prefecture as a stronghold, they will devour the other 4 continents. That's not right. Su Yu shook his head calmly. How can you be sure that they are going to attack the central prefecture, and not to join forces with the central prefecture? Join forces? The true man of the purple cloud thought he had misheard, but after thinking about it carefully, he was shocked. Do you mean that the central prefecture's king is colluding with the ghost race? Creak. Suyu threw the account to him. Isn't it explained very clearly here? The true man of the purple cloud took it and flipped it over. He gasped. The resources of the Heavenly Knife region have been accumulated for 100 years, and this is a premeditated sponsorship. It hasn't been exposed for such a long time, and the Heavenly Knife region can't hide it. There must be an expert behind it, and that person is the Central Prefecture's king. Who else could it be besides him? The ghost race had joined forces with the Central Prefecture's king. Could there be a more serious situation than this? However, you seem to have anticipated it? The true man of the purple cloud observed Suyu's calm expression and guessed. Suyu nodded slightly. The army of the ghost race will go to the Central Prefecture, and I have already speculated the next step of the Central Prefecture's king's plan. I have to say, his ambition is not small. It's a pity that he ran into someone else this time. Suyu's eyes shone with a shrewd light, and a playful smile appeared on his face. The true man of the purple cloud was confused. Who are you referring to? Suyu smiled and looked at the bottomless cave. Of course it's Mo Tianxian, the woman who hides her abilities. She is playing a very big game of chess. You mean she's not dead? The true man of the purple cloud frowned. He couldn't keep up with Suyu's thoughts at all. Even if the whole world dies, this woman won't necessarily die. Having figured out some key points, Suyu's heavy heart was swept away. Chapter 1071. While they were having a conversation, someone suddenly interrupted them. Moreover, it escaped the detection of Suyu and the true man of the purple cloud. Swish. All of a sudden, a middle-aged man dressed in a blue robe with a golden python appeared in front of them. He had an extraordinary bearing, as if he was the ruler of the world. His eyes seemed to contain the stars and were extremely deep. With a faint smile on his face, he stood in front of them with his hands behind his back. Looking at this person, the true man of the purple cloud was slightly surprised, but not too surprised. It's the Duanxian Cliffmaster. I didn't expect to disturb you too. Jing Qinglong was horrified. The legendary 10th Prefecture King, the King of Darkness who controlled the black market of Jiuzhou. However, the Duanxian Cliffmaster smiled gently and shook his head. I have been here for several days, and I did not come here specifically for the Ghost Clan. Of course, the invasion of the Ghost Clan did surprise me. What is even more surprising is that the Ghost Clan has been hiding under the Red Blood Palace for 100 years. He had come a few days ago. If he was not disturbed by the Ghost Clan, then why did he come? I was waiting for you. The Duanxian Cliffmaster looked at Suyu, sizing him up and nodding from time to time, looking very appreciative. However, his gaze was a little strange, as if he was looking for something. Looking for me? Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Swish. The Duanxian Cliffmaster took out a jade box with a flip of his palm. 10 golden veins were sealed inside. The real spirit dragon veins. And very complete. The true man of the purple cloud and Jing Qinglong's eyes flashed with surprise. 100 years ago, a seriously injured real dragon fell on the Jiuzhou continent. Many powerful people of Jiuzhou went to fight for it. In the end, the real dragon easily crushed dozens of all creation's old monsters before it died, causing a sensation for a while. Later, the real dragon died of serious injuries, and its remains were divided among the strong people of the continent. After 100 years, most of the remains had been used for alchemy, crafting, or practicing technique. There were very few real dragon remains left on the continent. The real dragon's most precious dragon veins had long been extinct, and there was no supply on the market. It was rumored that a total of 100 dragon veins had been extracted from the real dragon, and more than half of them were incomplete. In the remaining battles, the remaining 50 veins were damaged. In the end, there were no more than 20 complete true spirit dragon tendons. As the most important part of a true dragon, the dragon tendon contained the essence of the true dragon's bloodline. It had a wide range of uses. In the past 100 years, it had only appeared in the market 5 or 6 times. Every time it appeared, it would shock the world and would definitely attract the prefecture's kings to fight for it. What was unexpected was that the severed fairy cliff master had collected 10 of them. Su Yu's pupils contracted, and a layer of golden internal energy channels appeared on the surface of his body. It was as if they were resonating with the 10 dragon veins. This meant that the 2 of them came from the same source, from the same true dragon. These are the true dragon spirit tendons that you found through the Tianya token. There are 10 of them. Please accept them. The true man of the purple cloud gasped. All 10 dragon veins were given to Su Yu? Staring at Su Yu, the true man of the purple cloud was extremely shocked. The value of 10 real dragon spirit veins could no longer be measured by crystals. To be precise, it was a priceless item. Rather than saying that the 10 dragon veins were exchanged, it was more like a gift to Su Yu. Where did Su Yu get such a great honor to receive such a gift from the Duanxian Cliff Master? Cliff Master, I can't accept such a generous gift, Su Yu said lightly, not accepting it. How could the tens of millions that he had given to the silver-masked man be worth the value of 10 real dragon spirit tendons? Not even the tip of the iceberg. How could he not know that this was a gift from the Duanxian Cliffmaster? Based on your friendship with my daughter, what's the harm in giving you 10 dragon veins? The Duanxian Cliffmaster said disapprovingly. My daughter? It must be Gongsun Wuxia. Although she had never taken the initiative to expose herself, her relationship with the Tianya auction house could not be inferred. Cliff Master, if you have anything to say, you'd better tell me the truth. I really need the dragon veins, but please state your price, Cliff Master, Su Yu said calmly. His friendship with Gongsun Wuxia was far from the point where he would give her 10 real dragon spirit tendons for no reason. The Duanxian Cliffmaster must have come for a reason. Ha ha ha, Wuxia said that you are more intelligent than others, and she was right. The Duanxian Cliffmaster said approvingly. I am a businessman, and I never make a loss. I have waited for you for a few days, and of course I want to make a deal with you with 10 real dragon spirit tendons. The Duanxian Cliffmaster was a combination of radiation theft, robbery, kidnapping, assassinations, and other dark businesses. But in essence, he was a businessman, a black market merchant. What he said was not false. Please go ahead. Su Yu said calmly, but he was slightly puzzled. The Duanxian Cliffmaster, the king of darkness whose influence covered the entire Jiuzhou continent, had something that could only be obtained by trading with him. The Duanxian Cliffmaster smiled leisurely. It's very simple. If one day you get a ticket, please bring my Gongsun clan along. Ticket? What was that? Something that the Duanxian Cliffmaster mentioned, and that he was willing to pay 10 priceless dragon veins, was definitely not an ordinary item. Can you tell me what the ticket is? Su Yu asked. The Duanxian Cliffmaster chuckled. You don't need to know now. Anyway, you will get a ticket and you will bring us along. All you need to do is say the word, and it will not cause you any loss. How about that? Okay, but I hope you can agree to another condition of mine. Su Yu's eyes flashed. The Duanxian Cliffmaster pondered. The process of the transaction is the bargaining chip. Well, tell me, if it is within reason, I can agree. I'm afraid you have to agree, Su Yu said calmly, and then transmitted his voice into the Duanxian Cliffmaster's ears. After listening, the Duanxian Cliffmaster's face darkened. Is there such a thing? After thinking for a long time, the Duanxian Cliffmaster let out a long sigh. Although the price is high, to ensure that the transaction goes smoothly, I really have to agree to it. Well, I will accept this matter, but you should be careful. Thank you, Cliffmaster. I hope this transaction is not too bad. The Duanxian Cliffmaster laughed bitterly and tore the void to escape, leaving the true man of the purple cloud and Zheng Qinglong dumbfounded. After a long time, the true man of the purple cloud had a bitter expression on his face. From the beginning to the end, the Duanshan Cliffmaster did not look at him. In the eyes of the King of Darkness, his importance was not even 1/10,000th of Su Yu's. Pretending that nothing had happened, the true man of the purple cloud waited for Su Yu to put away the real spirit dragon veins before returning to the topic before he was interrupted. Are you saying that Mo Tianxian is plotting something? Yes. Su Yu nodded and said, as the strongest person below the mortal fairy, is it really possible that she didn't notice the entrance to the world of ghosts and souls? I'm afraid you've already sensed it, but you're pretending not to know? The true man of the purple cloud shook his head. Impossible. The invasion of the ghost race is extremely harmful. If she is aware of the existence of the entrance, it is the right way to close it as soon as possible. What benefit can she get from allowing the ghost race to recuperate underground in the Jojo continent? Aren't the benefits right in front of us? Su Yu looked in the direction of the central prefecture. Suddenly, the true man of the purple cloud's eyes lit up. Are you saying that Mo Tianxian deliberately allowed the Ghost Clan to invade so that the Central Prefecture's king would become the target of public criticism? The Ghost Clan was now heading to the Central Prefecture to join forces with the Central Prefecture's king. Openly colluding with the Ghost race was tantamount to becoming the enemy of the entire Jojo continent. He was afraid that all the prefecture kings of the continent would unite to crusade against the Central Prefecture's king. In this way, the Central Prefecture's king, the greatest threat to the blessed and heavenly lands, would be eliminated through the hands of the Ghost Clan and the rest of the prefecture kings. The problem is, why does Mo Tianxian think that the prefecture kings can join forces to fight against the comeback of the Ghost Clan and the Central Prefecture's king? If the Ghost Clan and the Central Prefecture's king join forces and wipe out the major forces of Jojo, wouldn't she become the greatest sinner in the history of Jojo? The true man's face was dark. Su Yu was deep in thought. This is also the only thing I don't understand. I only have a few speculations. How can she be sure that she can win? The slightest deviation would mean the destruction of the entire continent. Would the risk of her plot be too great? In short, Mo Tianxian must have her own plot. This woman was far more mysterious than he had met. Even the glittering jeweled demonic god said that she couldn't see through this woman. The matter had come to an end. The people of the Red Blood Palace were safe and sound. What was destroyed was just an empty building. True man of the purple cloud, it's meaningless to stay here any longer. Please return to the Purple Cloud Palace as soon as possible. It's hard to guarantee that the Ghost Clan won't take a detour and attack the Purple Cloud Palace, Su Yu said. Yes, I have the same intention. Since Palace Master Mo may be safe, I won't stay for long. Farewell. The true man looked solemn. The situation was critical, and he couldn't stay away from the Purple Cloud Palace for too long. After watching him leave, Su Yu said to Zheng Qinglong, "You go too. Zheng Sheng and Qiu need you in these troubled times." Zheng Qinglong hesitated and stared at Su Yu. "What about you?" They had only known each other for half a day, but this young man who had just reached adulthood had left a deep impression on him. "I have other plans." Su Yu looked up at the sky. Only he could see that there was a black cloud in the depths of the sky that ordinary people couldn't see. It was the tribulation cloud. "Take care," Zheng Qinglong said sincerely. Zheng Qinglong said sincerely. He really did not wish to see such an outstanding genius fall in this chaotic world. Zheng Qinglong tore the void with one hand and left. Su Yu was left standing on the ruins of the Red Blood Palace, his figure lonely and desolate. When the Red Blood Palace was glorious, I was a nobody. When the Red Blood Palace was destroyed, my name spread throughout the world. Now, when I'm going through the tribulation, I'm stepping on the ruins of the Red Blood Palace. Could this be fate? The first of the tribulations of 3 nines, the tribulation of heaven, had arrived. There was still half a day before it really came, giving Su Yu time to prepare. Taking out a few drops of the fountain of life, Suyu took them one after another, and slowly moisturized his depleted mental strength. Before the tribulation of heaven, he should be able to recover to his peak. Then, Suyu took out several treasures and placed them in front of him. These were important things that were needed to resist the tribulation of heaven. However, they were far from enough. Yun Yazi said that Suyu's tribulation of heaven was no trivial matter and could not be overcome with common sense. In addition, the tribulation of Xingji's breakthrough to the Almighty should also be on Suyu's head. When the tribulation of heaven broke out, it would definitely take his life. While thinking, Suyu took out a broken scroll. It was the dragon form technique that he had obtained from Qi Ming. Suyu had the dragon veins in his body and only lacked the power of the all creation's primordial spirit. He didn't know if he could practice the dragon form technique. And there was only one person who could answer this question. Chapter 1072. The waves, the waves, the waves make the little sister laugh. Clang, clang. In the empty soul space, a bone suddenly fell. Ah, there is a bone. The evil god, who was lying on the ground and singing leisurely with his legs crossed, suddenly lit up. He pounced on the bone and put it in his mouth. Just as he was about to enjoy himself, he suddenly realized something. Damn it, who is it? Who dares to insult this deity who slaughters the heavens and exterminates the earth? The blood-red evil god crawled up with a start and raised his head to the sky and barked. Clang, clang. Another bone fell, and the blue veins on the evil god's forehead bulged. Bastard Suyu, do you really think I am a dog? Just then, another bone fell. Well, I am a dog. The evil god suddenly lay down, smiled, and took the 3 bones in front of his mouth. He licked them with his tongue and moaned in pleasure. What delicious bones! I haven't had this feeling for hundreds of thousands of years. I miss it so much, woo-woo. Swish. Suyu's figure appeared in the soul space and said indifferently, How much do you miss being a dog? What do you know? This is instinct, okay? When I was still a dog, bones were the best holy meal I dreamed of. After so long, I still can't forget the glorious days when I was a dog, the evil god retorted. You should be glad that you weren't brought to the table by someone else, Suyu said calmly. The evil god snorted and stared at Suyu. Have you finally collected the real spirit dragon veins? How many do you have? How could the evil god not know what he meant? Not many, just 10. I wonder if it is enough to train to the body of 9 dragons? Since the other party still remembered his promise, everything was easy. The evil god smacked his lips and said in surprise, I was just saying it casually to trick you into giving me a few almighty souls to eat. Did you really find so many dragon veins? He knew a little about the Jiuzhou continent. The resources were very poor, and the real spirit dragon veins were almost 0. After living comfortably for so long, do you feel that your skin is itching? Suyu said lightly, a cold light gradually appearing in his eyes. Hey, wait, I'm not lying to you. Since you found the dragon tendon and cultivated the 9 dragons physique, of course it's nothing. The evil god hurriedly stopped, not because he was afraid of Suyu's soul torture, but because he did not want to break the trust that he had built up with great difficulty. It would be even more difficult for him to ask anything from Suyu in the future. As the cold light faded, Suyu said, I only have half a day's time. Can you do it? Half a day, so urgent. I seem to feel the aura of a tribulation. TSK, it's the extremely rare 39 tribulations. If that's the case, then you won't be able to escape this calamity. I've never heard of anyone successfully surviving the 39 tribulations. The evil god's perception was amazing. He could smell the existence of the tribulation even though he was isolated from the soul space. He could also accurately name the tribulation. Ha ha ha, but you've come at the right time. I've long felt that you should be struck by lightning. This is the consequence of imprisoning an emperor who can slaughter the heavens and destroy the earth. Are you afraid? The evil god put his legs on his hips and laughed into the sky. He looked like he was gloating. Suyu chuckled. Oh? If I turn into ashes, you'll be exiled in the soul space forever. Is that okay? The soul space relied on the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Unless the divine nine-dragon cauldron was destroyed, the soul space would not be automatically unlocked. The evil god's laughter came to an abrupt halt. Suddenly, with a mournful look on his face, he ran up to Suyu and wailed miserably. Brat, if you have any conscience, you must remember to let me go before you turn into ashes. Don't worry, before I die, I won't forget to drag you along with me. Suyu smiled and stroked the dog's head. Woof woof. You despicable B***starred, you want to take me with you even before you die. The evil god glared at Suyu fiercely. Suyu kicked him over. Then why don't you hurry up and help me achieve the body of the 9 dragons? The evil god rolled on the ground a few times and climbed up as if nothing had happened. He said seriously, "It seems that you have the confidence to survive the 39 tribulations. Well, I'll help you hone the body of the 9 dragons." In his opinion, with the protection of a great god like Yunyazi, although the 39 tribulations were extremely dangerous, they might not be able to do anything to Suyu. However, half a day is too hasty. I need at least 9 days. 9 days? Suyu frowned deeply. The ordeal was right in front of him. How could he wait for 9 days? The first ordeal of the 39 tribulations, the ordeal, should be no problem for a freak like you. The evil god looked at Suyu and said, "Moreover, with the power of the ordeal, you can better hone the 10 dragon veins and remove the residual demonic energy in them, making them purer. It will be of great benefit to you." Upon hearing that, Suyu seemed to understand. The so-called ordeal is also a tempering for the tribulation taker. You should try to rely on your body more and use fewer treasures and tools. Only then can you get the most benefits. Suyu nodded. Yes, I understand. What should I do with the dragon veins next? The evil god held up both legs and examined them one by one with a pair of dog eyes. He said, "Of course you have to check them first. After all, the dragon veins are the essence of the real dragon. If there is an incomplete dragon's soul hidden in them and it unknowingly fused into your body, it will be very bad." When it said that, Suyu secretly thought that he had been careless and neglected this point. After all, there was a deity like the evil god who had lived for countless years and was experienced. The first leg was fine. The second leg was also fine. The third leg, when it came to the 9th leg, the evil god's face was expressionless. He nodded slowly. This real dragon should have died very thoroughly. The dragon's soul was completely destroyed, and not a trace was left. Hey, wait! Suddenly, the evil god's dog eyes stared at the last leg, the 10th dragon vein, and its eyes lit up. The dog's paw stroked the surface of the 10th dragon vein. Suddenly, a drop of golden blood seeped out of the golden dragon vein. It was the same color as the dragon vein, and its breath was exactly the same. It was impossible to detect the existence of the golden blood just by perception. Boy, where did you get the dragon vein? The original body of this dragon vein seems to be quite extraordinary, the evil god said in surprise. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. It was given to me by a strong mortal fairy. Why, is there a problem with the dragon vein? There is no problem with the dragon vein, but there is a problem with the original body of the dragon. It actually condensed a drop of divine dragon blood. My goodness, this is a real dragon in the process of becoming a god. And looking at the pure state of this drop of divine blood, it is clear that it has successfully taken the most important step to become a god. As long as it practices diligently for a period of time, all the dragon blood in its body will be transformed into divine dragon blood, and it will become a god. However, it seems that after sacrificing the first drop of divine blood, it was ambushed during its weak period, and it died with hatred. Suyu was puzzled. Is a divine dragon that rare? Listening to the tone of the evil god, the divine dragon seemed to be very extraordinary. The evil god had always been arrogant. If it could be so amazed, it must be extraordinary. Nonsense. The divine dragon is an existence that surpasses many gods. Once it becomes a god, it can manipulate the rules of heaven and earth, change the world, and is omnipotent. The gods of ordinary races turn and flee when they see it. Don't you think it is powerful? The evil god rolled its eyes. Su Yu said lightly, compared to you? Compared to me, of course. The evil god said matter-of-factly. It realized halfway through its sentence and changed its word. Compared to me, it is about the same. I am also very powerful. Well, don't mind these details. Boy, your luck is so strong that it can be said to be nature-defying. This drop of divine dragon blood is infinitely beneficial for your cultivation of the divine body of the evil dragon. It also has amazing benefits for your cultivation. The evil god was a little reluctant. If it wasn't for my divine blood, which can't be mixed with the blood of other gods, I would never give it to you. After listening, Su Yu stared at the golden blood and thought, how should I refine it? Refine? You? If you are not afraid of dying, you can refine it. The evil god had a look of contempt. Don't underestimate this drop of blood. Unless it is a complete god's body, it can't bear this drop of blood at all. At this moment, the soul space suddenly shook. The evil god rolled its eyes. Bastard boy, you are upset when I say something bad about you. You want to bully me, can't you be a little? Shut up. Su Yu shouted coldly, staring at the soul space, his eyes bursting with a strange light. It's not you. The evil god noticed that Su Yu's expression was not right and realized that something was wrong. Suddenly, 3 loud dragon roars spread through the soul space. At the same time, 3 kinds of divine light, purple, red, and white, descended and wrapped around the evil god. Su Yu was very familiar with the aura contained in the 3 kinds of light. Time, space, soul. The evil god was wrapped in 3 kinds of light, and his body and soul were all fixed in a different time and space. Then, there was a distortion above the soul space, and a huge cauldron suddenly descended. The cauldron was carved with 9 flying dragons of different shapes. They were lifelike and extremely lifelike, as if they would fly out in the next moment. It really is you, the divine 9-dragon cauldron, Su Yu said in surprise. The soul space was created by the divine 9-dragon cauldron. Those who could enter this place, apart from Su Yu, could only have the divine 9-dragon cauldron. However, after having the divine 9-dragon cauldron for so long, the divine 9-dragon cauldron had never taken the initiative to appear. It had always been firmly entrenched in the center of Su Yu's soul. This was the first time that it had appeared like this. The divine 9-dragon cauldron descended and fell in front of Su Yu. This was the first time that Su Yu had seen its body. Looking closely, he could feel the mighty breath of the divine 9-dragon cauldron. The kind of vast and domineering breath that filled the ancient divine wilderness made people tremble. When looking at the divine 9-dragon cauldron carefully, Su Yu finally found that the inside of the cauldron was dry. There used to be red blood constantly flowing into Su Yu's body, but now there were only dry traces left inside. Then, purple, red, and white, 3 flying dragons really flew out from the divine 9-dragon cauldron. From the carvings, they turned into real bodies. When they flew above Su Yu's head, Su Yu's body trembled. That breath was divine. Could it be that the 9 flying dragons were not carvings, but real dragons? The 3 divine dragons surrounded the evil god, holding the divine dragon blood in the palm of the evil god, and flew back to the divine 9-dragon cauldron, turning back into a carving. The drop of golden blood fell into the divine 9-dragon cauldron. A surprising scene unfolded. In the dry divine 9-dragon cauldron, a layer of red liquid overflowed. However, compared to the past, the red liquid was darker, with a touch of gold, and the energy it contained was far more than the red liquid of the past. The divine blood entered the cauldron and was diluted into a red liquid. Su Yu's mind roared. Witnessing this scene with his own eyes, he had an unusually shocking guess. Chapter 1073. Buzz. The divine nine-dragon cauldron seemed to have regained its vitality. Its whole body vibrated, and a wisp of golden liquid overflowed from the divine nine-dragon cauldron and flowed through the fourth emerald dragon body on the cauldron wall. More than 30% of the dragon body turned into crystals in an instant. This scene made Su Yu unable to suppress his excitement. Since the third dragon, the white dragon that represented the soul, had crystallized, there had not been a new dragon crystallized for a long time. At this moment, after obtaining the new divine blood, there was actually a fourth emerald dragon crystallized. At the same time, Su Yu's left hand shone with a hint of emerald light, like a palm carved from emerald jade, like a natural precious jade. In the center of the palm, a delicate emerald dragon could be vaguely seen. It was lifelike and turned into a mark on the palm. A strange message poured into Su Yu's mind. Dragon of life. Su Yu murmured. The emerald dragon represented life. This was not the same as the fountain of life, which meant to heal injuries, but literally, resurrection. As long as there was still a breath of life left in the world, it could bring the dead back to life with the divine hand of life. It was different from the resurrection of the dead, which cost Su Yu's life as the price to go back to a certain time and space. Now, it could bring the dead back to life. However, the more powerful the creature, the more difficult it was to resurrect the dead. Su Yu was currently powerless to do anything beyond the mortal fairy level. Even so, it was enough to shock Su Yu. After time, there was space, and after space, there was the soul. After the soul, there was resurrection. Each was more shocking and profound than the last. Su Yu couldn't help but tremble. How strong was the power contained in the divine nine-dragon cauldron? A one-third crystallized emerald dragon had already given Su Yu the power to resurrect the dead. Then, what kind of power would the emerald dragon obtain when it was completely crystallized? At the same time, the liquid that flowed through the emerald dragon flowed along the cauldron wall and dripped into Su Yu's body. In an instant, a shocking burning pain penetrated Su Yu's body, almost causing his soul space to collapse. His body seemed to be burning, and the scorching and powerful energy wantonly burned in Su Yu's body from the inside out. It was dragon blood. That drop of divine dragon blood had been diluted 100 times by the divine nine-dragon cauldron. However, when it entered Su Yu's body, it still broke through his body's limit. He could feel that his physical body was on the verge of collapsing, about to collapse from the inside out. What was even more dangerous was that the huge amount of energy had nowhere to go, so it quickly merged into his dantian. Now, Su Yu's inner and outer dantians were more than 10 times larger than a grade 9 fairy's. It could be said that they had reached an unprecedented level of strength. However, only a trace of the enormous energy flowed into his dantian, and it filled his external dantian. Then, his inner dantian was also filled. As for the remaining energy, there was still more than 40%, and it was still continuously gathering in his dantian. Su Yu's expression changed greatly, and he knew that the situation was far from good. He wanted to stop the energy and expel it from his body, but it was already too late. The terrifyingly enormous energy directly caused his inner and outer dantians to explode. After the explosion, the size of his dantian had expanded to twice its original size. However, there was still 40% of the energy left. Then, the newly expanded dantian exploded once more, doubling in size. At this moment, the remaining 25% of the energy had all merged into his dantian. For the third time, his dantian exploded. After the expansion of his dantian, it had reached an unimaginable level. It was equivalent to 8 times its original size. Su Yu could clearly see that the silver sword energy that had once filled his dantian now occupied less than 1/8 of the corner. If it were compared to the size of an ordinary grade 9 fairy, Su Yu's dantian would be 80 times their size. In other words, the vital energy of 80 grade 9 fairies was only equal to Su Yu's. The biggest change in his dantian was that after the 3 violent explosions, the diaphragm of his inner and outer dantians had been destroyed, and the inner and outer dantians had become one. This was completely unexpected. When his dantian had been destroyed in the past, Su Yu had found a way to create an inner dantian in his dantian, and from then on, he had 2 dantians. Unexpectedly, the continuous violent explosions had shattered the diaphragm, and the 2 inner and outer dantians had become one. This saved him from some hidden dangers. When breaking through to the almighty level, the dantian would transform into the almighty fetal crystal. The inner and outer dantians had never existed before. If any unfavorable changes occurred during the transformation, it would be troublesome. I wonder what will happen when a huge dantian like mine transforms into an almighty fetal crystal. Su Yu was full of expectations. When breaking through to the almighty level, the stronger the dantian was, the stronger the fetal crystal would be. 1/3 of the energy diluted by a drop of divine blood had given Su Yu great benefit. Not only had he obtained the divine hand of life, but his dantian had also expanded unprecedentedly, reaching an extremely prosperous state. It seemed like the evil god was right. The benefits of the dragon god's blood were really endless. Moreover, through this drop of divine blood, Su Yu had also confirmed one thing. If he wanted to continue to crystallize the flying dragon, the only way was to find divine blood, and the stronger the better. After the divine 9-dragon cauldron dripped the red liquid, it spiraled out of the soul space and resettled in Su Yu's soul. It seemed to be even more secure than before. Woof woof, woof woof woof. The evil god had finally broken free, and subconsciously barked a few times. He was bound by time, space, and soul, isolated in a different space and time, and had no idea that the divine 9-dragon cauldron had descended. However, as the evil god of the past, he more or less sensed that something was wrong. What happened just now? It seems like something extraordinary has come. Wait, where is the divine dragon's blood? Who took it? The evil god suddenly shouted, and immediately stared at Su Yu fiercely. Was it you? Did you take it? What did you do to me, the divine emperor? Su Yu's face was expressionless. There was a situation in the soul space just now, and I have put away the divine dragon's blood. What situation? I have no comment. You are lying. I never lie. But you are lying now. The inspection of the dragon tendon has been completed. What should I do next? Su Yu asked. The evil god stared at Su Yu with dissatisfaction and said reluctantly, "It's very simple. Let me out and I will take control of part of your body. Don't hit me first, just let a trace of my consciousness leave. My original body is trapped, and I can't fight you with just my consciousness alone." Hearing this, the cold light in Su Yu's eyes gradually faded. Unless he had no other choice, he would never let the evil god out. Okay, you take the dragon tendon first. If the transformation can be completed in 9 days, you will benefit, Su Yu said. The evil god smiled and said, "Do you want to give me the soul of a mortal fairy as compensation?" It was supposed to be a tease, but Su Yu said lightly, "Why not?" The evil god was stunned. He stared at Su Yu and said with mixed feelings, "I didn't expect that the little practitioner of the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion would one day stand in front of me and say such bold words. The world is unpredictable. The unpredictable is yet to come." Su Yu's face was calm, and he left the soul space without looking back. Returning to his body, Su Yu immediately felt the changes in his body. After being tempered by the diluted divine dragon's blood, a faint golden color appeared under his skin, and a surge of power that was neither human nor demon was rolling in his body. He clenched one hand, and a few rays of golden light flashed between his palms, and a few cracks appeared in the void easily. "This is Suyu was very surprised. His physical body had indeed grown, but it was far from the point where he could crush the void. The thing that could crush the void was the non-human, non-demonic power that had been integrated into his bloodline. Is this the dragon power? Suyu was deeply surprised. The body that had been tempered by the divine dragon's blood could also be tempered with additional dragon power. Based on this dragon power alone, even without the body of the 9 dragons, there were not many in the almighty realm who could compete with Suyu in terms of physical strength. After all, in the almighty realm, there were very few who could tear the space with one hand. Looking at his body again, it was solemn and dignified, as if he had been reborn. At the same time, the slightly childish face of the youth in the past had been transformed by the dragon blood, and there was a bit more fortitude, making Suyu look more mature. Now, Suyu was no longer a teenager, but a young man. Phew, the Duanxian Cliff Master really sent me a big gift, Suyu said. However, the Duanxian Cliff Master probably did not notice that there was a drop of divine dragon's blood in the dragon vein. Otherwise, such an amazing thing would have been obtained by him long ago, and why would he leave it for Suyu? The value of that drop of divine dragon's blood was 100 times greater than the dragon's veins. Looking up at the sky, there was another dark cloud in the sky that ordinary people could not see. The pressure was getting heavier and heavier. Suyu took out a drop of orange liquid and his eyes shone. The last drop of honey of 100 flowers was waiting for this moment. At the same time, Suyu took out the floating life door and the 5 elements divine prison. The former was to cultivate the 9 dragons' demon-subduing art and strive to break through the last stage with superb comprehension. As for the latter, after comprehending the 99 demon clan inscriptions, Suyu was only 1 character away from activating 10% of the 5 elements' divine prison's power. With the great calamity approaching, he could not give up any hope of improving his strength. His left eye was filled with purple light, and Suyu entered the state of time acceleration. At the same time, he swallowed the precious honey of 100 flowers and immediately fell into meditation and training. Tianya City. In a tea house, 2 stunningly beautiful women were drinking in the upper room. This time, thanks to 3rd junior sister taking me away in time, otherwise we would have been in trouble. Han Xuan's face was filled with innocence, and she smiled as she touched the head of the woman in front of her. She was an extremely cute, petite, and exquisite girl, beautiful like a little demon fox in the mountains. All women were overflowing with motherly love, and they loved her very much, treating her like a pet fairy. It was a pity that the girl was reticent, as if something had passed away from her. She was lifeless and cold. "It's my duty." The girl nodded indifferently and picked up a mouthful of delicious food. Han Xian also picked up a mouthful with a smile. She had been sent to the Heavenly Knife region by the Central Prefecture's king to participate in the battle against the Blessed and Heavenly Lands. However, she was intercepted by her 3rd junior sister on the way, who said that something had changed in the Heavenly Knife region and that it was inadvisable to go there. When she came to the Heavenly Knife region to inquire about it, Han Xian was shocked. As the Heavenly Knife region master, she had colluded with the Ghost Clan. Moreover, there was news that the Ghost Clan Great Army was marching along the Heavenly Knife region towards the imperial city of the Central Prefecture. If they did not leave the Heavenly Knife region in time and encountered the Ghost Clan, the consequences would be dire. Chapter 1074. The 3rd junior sister took out a jade pendant in silence. It was the sound-transmitting jade pendant that contained the Central Prefecture's king's message. Han Xian took it and scanned it with her mind. It was indeed the Central Prefecture's king's arrangement. He had sent her to intercept Han Xian and bring her back to the sect. That's fine. I don't want to fight with the Blessed and Heavenly Lands. Let's go back to the sect. Han Xian stretched herself. This was exactly what she wanted. She just wanted to cultivate. But suddenly, Han Xuan's vision became blurry. She subconsciously waved her hand in front of her. Why can't I see my hand clearly? And why do I feel sleepy? The third junior sister raised her head and said calmly, "It's because the food you ate contained a drug that could knock out all creation's old monsters." Yes, it was me. Han Xuan's body began to weaken. Her all creation's mighty force was continuously draining away, and her consciousness was gradually slipping into unconsciousness. She struggled in confusion. "You want to bring me back to the imperial city like this?" She thought this was a hint from the Central Prefecture's king, because she had a precedent of escaping from the Central Prefecture's imperial city. Maybe it was her master who asked her third junior sister to do this. "No, I'll take you to another place." The third junior sister stood up indifferently. Her small body easily grabbed Han Xian and carried her on her shoulder. While she was in a daze, she heard her third junior sister murmuring coldly, "It's time for an end between us, brother Su Yu." "Su Yu? Which Su Yu?" Unfortunately, under the effects of the medicine, he fell into a deep sleep. As for third junior sister, she took out a pine cone and threw it in front of her. The pine cone broke through the void and carried her away. In the sea of clouds, the Duanxian cliff master sat cross-legged, facing the direction of the central plains. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he shattered the void in front of him with a palm strike. In the void, something seemed to be interrupted and stopped. A boundless emperor aura swept out. "Severed Fairy Cliff Master? Are you waiting for me here?" A figure in a royal robe stepped out. It was the domineering Central Prefecture's king. The Duanxian Cliffmaster nodded. "Yes, I promised someone to give you 9 days." This was the promise he had made to Su Yu. It would only take Su Yu 9 days to stop the Central Prefecture's king. Otherwise, if Su Yu was killed by the Central Prefecture's king, the Severed Fairy Cliff's investment in Su Yu would be wasted. The Central Prefecture's king's indifferent face revealed a trace of ridicule. A mere ant actually managed to persuade the King of Darkness to make a move. "I have underestimated him." With that, the Central Prefecture's king clasped his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "I will double the amount he offered you. Then make way." As the legendary 10th Prefecture's king, his strength had always been a mystery. No one knew anything about him, and even his origins were extremely strange. No one was able to find out anything about him. It was as if he had appeared overnight, and then with irresistible force, he controlled the continent's dark forces and established the Severed Fairy Cliff. If it wasn't necessary, the Central Prefecture's king didn't want to fight with him and waste his time. "He gave it to you, but you can't give it to me. If you don't want to fight me, then stay here for 9 days. After 9 days, you can do whatever you want," the Severed Fairy Cliff Master said indifferently. The Central Prefecture's king was silent. If Su Yu gave him the divine 9-dragon cauldron, he couldn't give it to him. "So, you're going to stop me?" The Central Prefecture's king was actually agitated. In an instant, the weather changed and boundless golden clouds surged, as if an emperor had descended. The Severed Fairy Cliff Master didn't want to be outdone. He also released his aura. The dark clouds were like a heavenly tribulation, rolling and covering half of the sky. "If you insist on not listening to my advice," from afar, the sky was half dark and half golden. As his voice fell, the next moment, the two completely different skies collided. The Severed Fairy Cliff Master and the Central Prefecture's king were still standing in the same place. It seemed that they hadn't moved at all, but in fact, they had already exchanged hundreds of blows in the blink of an eye. A trace of black blood flowed from the corner of the Severed Fairy Cliff Master's mouth. The Central Prefecture's king's body swayed, and there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. "I didn't expect the King of Darkness to be so powerful." Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, the Severed Fairy Cliff Master chuckled. "I don't think anyone would have thought that the Central Prefecture's king had already touched the edge of a god. You are the one who really hid your strength and deceived all the Prefecture's kings. Since you know, why don't you get out of the way? You are no match for me," the Central Prefecture's king said indifferently. The Severed Fairy Cliff Master shook his head. It is not a qualified businessman to let an investment go to waste easily. It is enough to fight you. But in his heart, he smiled bitterly. Boy, I don't think I can hold him for 9 days. I can only delay him for 6 days. For the next 3 days you are on your own. The ruins of the Red Blood Palace. Suyu opened his eyes and sighed helplessly. With the help of the honey of 100 flowers and the acceleration of time, the 9 dragons' devil-subduing art and the demon clan inscriptions could not make the progress they should have. There seemed to be a force of interference. Every time Suyu cultivated to a critical moment, he would go astray, or when he was comprehending a critical point, his thoughts would immediately go astray. The 9 dragons' devil-subduing art was only a step away from the top, and the comprehension of the demon clan inscriptions was only a step away. However, they were all blocked. Looking up at the sky, the blue sky in the eyes of others was bright and sunny, but in Suyu's eyes, it was filled with cold wind and dark clouds. The breath of the calamity could pour down at any time. In the end, the cultivation must be blocked by the calamity. Sweeping away the dust on his body, Suyu stood up and put away the 5 elements' divine prison and the floating life door. He stared at the dark clouds and smiled indifferently. Come on. What can you do to me? It was as if Suyu's words had provoked the calamity. The rolling boundless dark clouds suddenly tumbled violently like stormy waves. As far as the eye could see, the sky was filled with rolling dark clouds, all of them roaring and roaring. Boom! An earth-shattering clap of thunder that seemed to split the heavens and the earth shook the world. The ruins of the Red Blood Palace under his feet were instantly shaken into particles and dust. The millions of miles of fairy confining forest, along with the insects, fish, birds, and beasts in the forest, were all shattered. The ancient mountains were collapsing, the endless earth was cracking, and millions of mountains and rivers were reduced to a life-forbidden zone in the thunder. Somewhere, a white-clothed woman with a long sword on her back walked among the clouds. She was like a sword fairy, walking among the clouds. Even if the terrible thunder destroyed millions of mountains and rivers, it did not move her sleeves. Her crystal-like eyes seemed to contain the rules of heaven and earth. She looked at the millions of miles of mountains and rivers, looking in Suyu's direction. The 3 Nines ordeal. Someone in the Jojo continent is going through this ordeal? Is it the descendant of some deity? The white-clothed woman stopped in her tracks, not intending to disturb him. The 3 Nines ordeal could only be encountered by nature-defying geniuses, and the so-called nature-defying was usually only possessed by the descendants of deities. Even the 3 Nines ordeal can be divided into strong and weak ones. I wonder if his 3 Nines ordeal is strong or weak. In the Red Blood Palace, Suyu did not notice that millions of miles away, there was a terrifying existence silently watching him go through the ordeal. At the same time, in the rolling dark clouds, a pitch-black thunderbolt slowly floated down from the clouds. It was different from ordinary thunderbolts. It was not in the shape of a lightning bolt but a feather. Yes, a pitch-black feather. Suyu had never seen pitch-black thunderbolts, let alone a disastrous thunder in the form of a feather. 1,000,000 miles away, the white-clothed woman's calm face began to flash with a hint of surprise. It seems that the descendant of a deity is really going through the ordeal. What has appeared is the first-grade ordeal of the 3 Nines ordeal, the ordeal of Thunder Feather. The 3 Nines ordeal was divided into 9 grades. From grade 1 to grade 9, the intensity of the 3 Nines ordeal was getting stronger and stronger. Even if it was grade 1, few people could go through it. This was the rule of the Great Path, a restriction on the descendants of deities. The purpose was to prevent the position of deity from becoming hereditary. Imagine a descendant of a deity, compared to ordinary martial artists, who would be more likely to become a deity. Of course, it was the descendants of the deities. Even without the personal guidance of the deities, their descendants had endless resources and the bloodline of the gods left by their ancestors. In the long run, the descendants of the deities would all become deities, and ordinary martial artists would never be qualified to be promoted to the position of deity. Therefore, if the descendants of the deities were determined to become deities, they would definitely suffer the 3 nines ordeal. Therefore, generally speaking, only the descendants of the deities who had reached the peak of the mortal fairy and were approaching the end of their lifespans would establish the will to become deities and choose to break through the position of deity. The descendants of the younger generation of deities would rarely choose to establish the will of the great path. It's only a grade 1 tribulation. He must be a descendant of a deity who is about to pass away. He is old and weak, and has no hope of breaking through the peak of the mortal fairy, the woman in white said lightly. A grade 1 tribulation meant that the great path did not pose much of a threat to him. A grade 1 tribulation could cut off his path to godhood. But as a descendant of the deities, he chose Jojo to undergo the 3 nines ordeal. Did he not think that this would harm the vitality of the Jojo continent? The woman in white looked unhappy. 2 beams of sword light shot out from her eyes, piercing through millions of miles. The sword light swept across, replicating the details of everything within millions of miles. Then, the sword light flew back into the eyes of the woman in white, so that she could see the details of everything within millions of miles. Such a way of using the sword could be said to be superb and shocking. However, after receiving the information, the indifferent face of a mortal fairy who had cultivated the way of the sword started to change. What's going on? Why is it a 20-year-old youth going through the tribulation? Wait, he's only a 9th grade fairy. What's going on? The 3 nines ordeal was specially established for the descendants of the deities. It was almost impossible for ordinary martial artists to encounter it. Moreover, it would only appear when a mortal fairy broke through to become a deity. The scene in front of her turned the common sense of the woman in white upside down. A mortal martial artist, and a 9th grade fairy at that, was being suppressed by the 3 nines ordeal. Who is he? A 20-year-old 9th grade fairy is nothing special in the continent. Why is he regarded as a threat by the great path? The woman in white was lost in thought. A grade 1 tribulation was used on a peak mortal fairy who was about to pass away. Indeed, it could be inferred that the great path did not think much of a threat to him. However, at this moment, it was not used on a mortal fairy, nor on an all creations, nor on a divine master. It was used on a 9th grade fairy. What kind of great threat did the great Tao have to this youth? It was obvious. The woman in white stopped and stared into the distance. Above the red blood palace, Su Yu stared at the feather-shaped pitch-black thunderbolt. His hair stood on end, and his body instinctively felt threatened. Chapter 1075. However, since he was already here, he would face the calamity with peace of mind. Use less magic weapons, use your body more. Su Yu remembered the warning of the evil god, took a deep breath, sank his feet into the ground, and welcomed the arrival of the feather of thunder. The pitch-black feathers, like snowflakes, fell gently and touched Su Yu's shoulder. In an instant, Su Yu's body exploded into pieces, and even his soul was annihilated. The woman in white who was watching this scene sighed silently. Even a peak mortal fairy would not dare to be careless with the feather of thunder. A 9th grade fairy is too much. With a sigh, the woman moved away and continued to walk among the clouds. However, after taking a step, she stopped again, and the shock reappeared on her face. This is resurrection. In the red blood palace, amidst the shattered pieces of flesh, an emerald dragon swam in a left palm, exuding a pure breath of life. Then, Su Yu's shattered body, as if reborn, pieced back together, and the collapsed soul gathered again. In the blink of an eye, Su Yu returned to his original state, and there was no trace of the explosion on the surface of his body. However, Su Yu's heart was far from calm. It was terrifying. The power of the feather of thunder completely exceeded the limit of what his body could bear. One touch and he was annihilated. If he had not been prepared and activated the divine hand of life, he would have died immediately. At this moment, Su Yu could not help but wonder if Yun Yazi and the evil god were comforting him. They concluded that Su Yu could easily pass the 39 ordeals, and there was no problem. But the situation just now, Su Yu broke out in a cold sweat. This was not a small problem, but a huge problem. Just now, he had already died once, and the divine hand of life could only be used once a day. It was impossible for him to be resurrected a second time. At this moment, Su Yu felt like he was going to die. However, before he could curse out loud, a second world-shaking thunderclap exploded. Another feather of thunder slowly descended. Su Yu's face was extremely solemn. He raised his palm, and the 5 elements strong thunder seal that he had prepared appeared in his palm. This thunder seal was the prototype of a fairy artifact, and it had the function of absorbing disastrous thunder. It was the nemesis of disastrous thunder. Seeing the feather of thunder appear, Su Yu immediately activated the 5 elements strong thunder seal. A multicolored lightning beast spirit rushed out of the lightning seal, roaring as it charged forward. However, before he could get close to the lightning feather, he was touched by a wisp of lightning aura scattered from the lightning feather. In the end, the ferocious lightning beast was turned into dust before it could even let out a miserable groan. However, the feather of lightning did not weaken at all. It floated straight toward the 5 elemental strong thunder seal. The prototype immortal artifact finally came into contact with the feather of lightning. The 5 elemental strong thunder seal swallowed the feather of lightning in one breath. This scene caused Su Yu's expression to relax slightly. However, it was only for an instant. All of a sudden, the 5 elemental strong thunder seal exploded, turning into 4 fragments that fell at Su Yu's feet. As for the feather of thunder, it had only been weakened by a small layer. This is killing me. Su Yu was shocked beyond words. When he recalled the evil god's exhortation to use his body more and magical treasures less, he suddenly had the urge to vomit blood. Even the Dharma treasures made from the materials of immortal artifacts were broken into pieces. What could he do? Was the 39 ordeals that they were talking about the same as the 39 ordeals that Su Yu had experienced? Right at that moment, Su Yu's mind suddenly rang with a horrified dog's bark. F***CK. Why the F***CK are you going through a divine ordeal? What did you do? Divine ordeal? Su Yu suddenly felt that he was in great danger. Impossible, I clearly felt that what you were going through was the 39 ordeals that only mortals would go through. How the F***CK did it become the 39 ordeals of the descendants of the gods? That was a divine ordeal. Even I, the divine emperor, was scared to death. The ordeals of the descendants of the gods were called divine ordeals. The 39 ordeals were the ordeals that would befall when one broke through to become a god. They were the most terrible ordeals among the divine ordeals. The ordeals of non-god martial artists were collectively known as mortal ordeals. There were also ordeals called the 39 ordeals among mortal ordeals, but the meaning was completely different from the 39 ordeals of the descendants of the gods. The former was the real 39 ordeals, while the latter was a name imitated by mortal martial artists and was also jokingly called the fake 39 ordeals. If it was the fake 39 ordeals, according to the judgment of the evil god and Yun Yazi, the first ordeal would not be a big problem for Su Yu. However, Su Yu had experienced the irrigation of the divine dragon's blood, and his body contained the divine blood, so he was recognized as a descendant of the gods. Therefore, the fake 39 ordeals became the real 39 ordeals. Su Yu was killed by the divine dragon's blood. After figuring out why he was going through the real 39 ordeals, Su Yu was speechless. He thought that the divine dragon's blood had brought him good fortune. Who knew that it would bring him something fatal? The most terrible ordeal among the divine ordeals had actually befallen Su Yu. Deep in a huge crisis, Su Yu gritted his teeth. He could only rely on himself. He raised his hand and grabbed 8 silver balls made from the heavenly orchid silver bamboo were released by Suyu. They immediately condensed into the meteor light stream formation and wrapped around the feather of thunder, hoping to wear it down. However, as soon as he got close, the feather of thunder suddenly shot out 8 thunder threads. The 8 silver balls made from the first divine bamboo of Jiuzhou immediately turned into silver powder with a poof. As for the feather of thunder, it only dimmed by a faint layer. F***ck, let me go, I'm not doing this anymore. This is not going to work at all. The evil god sensed that something was wrong and turned pale with fright. Shut up! Suyu shouted in a deep voice, holding the underworld pearl in his hand, and threw it with all his might. The underworld pearl, which contained an unparalleled weight, pressed towards the feather of thunder with the power to shatter the void. Boom! A series of shocking muffled thunders exploded, causing the mountains and rivers within 1,000,000 miles to shake. However, the underworld pearl blocked the feather of thunder. However, after 3 minutes of stalemate, Suyu suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He was extremely shocked. The underworld pearl in the air suddenly made a cracking sound, and a crack appeared on the surface of its body that penetrated the sphere. Then, the underworld pearl split into 2 and shattered. The underworld pearl was broken. There was no time to feel sorry for it. Suyu quickly looked at the feather of thunder, and his pupils shrank when he saw that there was still half of the feather of thunder. Hiss! Suyu took a deep breath. Was this really a divine ordeal that a human could pass? However, in the face of crisis, how could Suyu dare to hesitate? Without saying a word, he took out a golden leaf from his sleeve. The color was very dim. It was the leaf that had absorbed 1/10 of the mortal fairy's strength of the Central Prefecture's king. Without hesitation, Suyu immediately threw it out. The golden leaf and the feather of thunder met in the air. The golden leaf turned into ashes, and the mortal fairy's strength erupted and collided with the feather of thunder. The stalemate lasted for less than a breath. The mortal fairy's strength dissipated, and the feather of thunder was reduced by 1/4. Swish! Immediately afterward, Suyu threw out another complete golden leaf. This was the last of the 3 life-saving golden leaves given to Suyu by the tree goddess. The golden leaf could kill any existence below the mortal fairy level, and its power was great. Against the sky, the golden leaf fell on the feather of thunder. Suddenly, the feather of thunder shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye, as if its power was being absorbed by the golden leaf. After 3 breaths, the golden leaf shattered with a puff, unable to withstand any more black thunder from the feather of thunder. At this moment, half of the feather of thunder had been eliminated, and the remaining feather of thunder was less than 1/10 of the original. However, even so, even if there was only a trace left, it was enough to destroy Suyu. Seeing that the feather of thunder was about to descend, Suyu's heart was in awe. He poured out all his magic weapons, even those that he had not used for a long time. With a backhand turn, a vital energy was caught in his palm, and he clasped his hands together to display it. However, before it could touch the feather of thunder, it was turned into ashes by a trace of thunder and lightning. Suyu did not hesitate. With a backhand, he sacrificed the soul-piercing spirit-capturing needle and threw it out, nailing it into the interior of the feather of thunder, causing the momentum of the feather of thunder to be blocked for a long time. The feather of thunder was less than 1/20th of the original. However, Suyu's high-grade magic weapons, except for the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword and the 5 elements divine prison, which he was reluctant to use, the rest had been destroyed. At the critical moment, Suyu took out a space ring, which was a famous item. There were many magic weapons stored in it. Although Suyu had not refined them and could not activate them, he could wear them down with the materials alone. When he opened it, there were no less than 50 pieces of fairy artifact fragments, and there were 3 semi-manufactured fairy artifacts. There was also one that was only a few steps away from a low-grade fairy artifact. It could barely be considered a low-grade fairy artifact. He had never taken these things seriously before, but now they had become Su Yu's life-saving items. How could he dare to hesitate at this moment? 50 pieces of fairy artifact fragments were thrown out, and the materials alone were used to fight the Feather of Thunder head-on. Without a doubt, the fairy artifact fragments were all turned into dust. However, under the effect of 50 pieces, a lot of the Feather of Thunder had been consumed, and only 1/50th of its complete state was left. Then, Su Yu threw out the 3 semi-manufactured fairy artifacts, and the Feather of Thunder was left with only 1% of its complete state. In front of him, there were only 100 strands of thunder left. Su Yu was overjoyed, and he threw out the last fairy artifact. Poof! With a faint sound, the 100 strands of thunder were finally annihilated, and the fairy artifact was torn apart and fell in all directions. However, Su Yu had no time to rejoice. A slight sound that made his hair stand on end sounded in his ears. A trace of pitch-black thunder was attached to the fragment of the fairy artifact. When it passed by Su Yu, it floated down and landed on Su Yu's shoulder like a strand of hair. At this moment, Su Yu could even hear his heart stop beating, and his whole body stiffened. Even if there was only a trace of it, it was enough for Su Yu to experience death once. This time, he could not come back to life. At this critical moment, Su Yu's survival instinct was stimulated, and he growled, "Time freeze." In the sky, a purple eye that covered 100,000 miles of mountains and rivers appeared. Under the purple light, the time and space of 100,000 miles of mountains and rivers were frozen. Even the dust stirred up in the air was frozen. And that strand of thunder was less than a millimeter away from Su Yu. It could almost be seen that the thunder had fallen on Su Yu's head, and it was only a short distance away from exploding. Su Yu broke out in a cold sweat and his shoulders slipped. He dodged to the side with extreme caution, and then took out a jade box with a flip of his palm. All the vital energies of 505th grade Almighty were sealed in it. In the beginning, he had intended to use it to open the divine crystal, but it had never come in handy. Now, he dared not hesitate, and crushed 500 portions of vital energies at once. All of a sudden, a blow no weaker than in all creation's old monsters erupted. Under the bombardment of the enormous vital energies, the thunder was in a stalemate for a full 10 breaths. When the last wisp of vital energy was exhausted, the thunder turned into a whiff of thunder and disappeared into nothingness. Su Yu was sweating profusely, and his forehead was full of beads of sweat. He had used up all his treasures to finally neutralize the Feather of Thunder. The real 39 ordeals were too terrifying. Phew! Su Yu's legs turned to jelly, and he sat on the ground in exhaustion. However, when he looked up, his face instantly stiffened. Another Feather of Thunder fell from the sky. Chapter 1076. Su Yu's mouth was filled with bitterness. A single lightning feather had already forced Su Yu to use up everything he had. 10 times the lightning feather. A deep sense of powerlessness surged into his heart. Fortunately, Su Yu's mind was far more tenacious than that of ordinary people. He struggled and stood up again, his eyes filled with unyielding tenacity. "I can only give it a try," Su Yu said. He took out a jade box in his palm. A drop of crystal-colored liquid lay quietly in it, filled with extraordinary vitality. This was the essence of life that Enmu had given Su Yu. It came from when he was a mortal fairy, and there were 3 drops in total. 2 drops had been used, and this was the last drop. The falling speed of the lightning feather was 10 times faster than ordinary lightning feather. Su Yu only had 10 breaths of time left. In the first breath, Su Yu braced himself and activated the divine decree. Space vortex. The huge wine-red eye that covered 100,000 miles appeared in the sky again. From the center of the eye, a dark vortex rapidly expanded, and by the third breath, it had expanded to 100,000 miles. The powerful sweeping force sucked in the lightning feather that was 10 times larger. What delighted Su Yu was that although the power of the lightning feather was strong, it did not have much resistance. Along with the vortex, it was slowly sucked into the vortex. The giant purple eye also slowly closed, sealing the lightning feather outside the void. In this way, he had avoided a disaster. However, before Su-Yu could completely relax, something strange happened. The heavenly eye that was about to close suddenly froze, leaving only a dark crack that could not be closed for a long time. Looking into the distance, a scene that made Su-Yu's heart sink suddenly appeared. A black lightning feather was stuck in the crack, making the heavenly eye unable to close. Chi-chi, with a few harsh muffled sounds, the heavenly eye suddenly trembled and immediately fell apart. With a stinging pain in Su-Yu's right eye, the heavenly eye was shattered. The lightning feather, however, was safe and sound in the void, without a trace of damage. This Su-Yu's face was pale. He had used the divine decree twice in a row, and his mental strength was almost overdrawn. Fortunately, the fountain of life in his hand was constantly replenishing him, and he was able to persist. But the lightning feather seemed to be angered, and its speed became faster and faster, like a falling stone. There was a 10-breath interval, but now it only needed 6 breaths to arrive. At the critical moment, Su-Yu gripped the fountain of life tightly and frantically replenished his mental energy, causing his divine decree to appear once again. 2 eyes appeared in the sky at the same time, one representing the eye of time, the other representing the eye of space. The 2 hovered in the air and gradually fused into one, forming a purplish-red eye. At the same time, the fusion of purple and red light shone straight on Lei-Yu. Time reversal. With a low roar, the spring of life flowed away at an extremely fast speed. The life aura within was rapidly extracted, and space-time began to flow backwards. The lightning feather continued to shrink, and time and space flowed back to the time before it was born. However, what caused Su-Yu's pupils to shrink was that although it was shrinking continuously, it was still falling continuously. The reversal of space was forcefully broken by it. Only the reversal of time worked. 5 breaths. In 5 breaths of time it would fall. At this moment, the thunder feather had only shrunk by half. 4 breaths. The feather of thunder shrank again. 3 breaths. The lightning feather had shrunk to half its original size, leaving behind only 3 times the size of a normal lightning feather. 2 breaths. The feather of lightning shrunk again, becoming only 5 times the size of an ordinary feather of lightning. 1 breath. The feather of lightning was only left with 70% of an ordinary feather of lightning. The feather of lightning descended, leaving only 35% of an ordinary feather of lightning. At the last moment, Su-Yu yelled angrily, opened the space ring, and threw out all the items in it. Endless crystals, countless precious materials, and magic treasures full of spirituality were all thrown out. The overwhelming spiritual objects, like a volcanic eruption, rushed out of the ring. However, when they touched the feather of lightning, they all turned into dust. The all-out blow seemed to have a huge effect. The 35% feather of lightning was hit until only a thread of lightning was left. However, even a thread was enough. The thread of lightning fell on Su-Yu's shoulder. Bang! With an extremely dull noise, Su-Yu's body was shattered into pieces without warning. Only the soul, the cloak of royalty on the surface of the body, was able to resist the thread of lightning with great difficulty. However, because of this, a huge gap was damaged, revealing the soul itself. The thread of lightning turned into a breath and dissipated, completely returning to nothingness. However, Su-Yu was panting, with a lingering fear on his face, as if he had just survived a disaster. Looking at the huge gap in the cloak of royalty, if it had been 2 threads of lightning that had just descended, even the soul would have been destroyed. If the soul was destroyed, it would be real death. With a few tremors, Su-Yu looked at the palm of the broken body and the remaining trace of the fountain of life. In his mind, he launched the reversal of time and space, which was only used on Su-Yu himself. His shattered body seemed to have returned to the moment before it was shattered. The soul also returned to the body, and the cloak of royalty, which merged with Su Yu's soul, was reversed and returned to its complete state. I died again. Su Yu's forehead was full of pale sweat, and the fountain of life in the palm of his hand, the last trace of vitality dissipated, turning into water vapor and dissipating between heaven and earth. If it was someone else, who could make the body go back? Is this really a disaster that people can survive? Su Yu trembled all over. His body and soul were seriously injured and damaged, and he could not even stand steadily. At this moment in Su Yu's soul, the evil god's urgent voice came again. "Boy, let me go, you are dead, I don't want to be banished to the soul space." Su Yu's heart thumped. "You mean there is more?" "This is nothing. Just now, it was just a test before the official arrival of the 39 ordeals, equivalent to a warm-up. The ordeal has not really happened yet." "What?" Even with Su Yu's temperament, he could not help but gasp. Looking up, a despairing scene unfolded before his eyes. The dark clouds covering 1,000,000 miles, which were originally turbulent, suddenly began to calm down. This was not a sign that the tribulation clouds were about to disperse, but the dead silence before the storm. At this moment, even the wind was silent, and the mountains and rivers within 1,000,000 miles were all in a dead silence. Su Yu could only hear the echoes of his own heartbeat in this world. Something was coming, something that made the whole world tremble. It was coming! The feather of thunder had appeared again. However, it wasn't one, not two, not three, and not four. It was countless. In the black clouds of millions of miles, black feathers, like black snowflakes, circled between heaven and earth. They floated to the top of Su Yu's head in unison. From a distance, the black snowflakes of millions of miles were all gathered in one direction. For a time, the mountains and rivers, the earth, the clouds floating in the air, were all filled with black snowflakes, which condensed into a mighty vortex, revolving towards the center. And the center was Su Yu. "Damn it, let me go, I don't want to die with you." The evil god was scared to death, anxiously circling in the soul space, screaming again and again. There was no saving it. Even if the kid's master, Yun Yazi, came out, there was absolutely no way to save it. If it was in its heyday, of course, it would have no problem dealing with the ordeal of Thunderfeather, but now it was a remnant soul body. Even if it came out, it would only end up being annihilated. Su Yu ignored the evil god's wild barking, but stood on the ruins, looking up at the endless tribulation clouds, looking at the endless thunder feathers, looking at the endless despair. In his mind, he could not help but recall his journey along the way, the martial arts training institute of the Xianyu prefecture, the sanctuary, the Lucian sect, the Empire of Darkness, the Red Blood Palace, until now. From a speck of dust in the vast land to the dazzling sun on the land of Jiuzhou today, when had he ever bowed his head, and when had he ever admitted defeat? At this moment, he was about to perish in the starry sky, leaving behind his own brilliant traces. Wasn't this the portrayal of Su Yu's life? At this moment, he was about to perish in the starry sky, leaving behind his own brilliant traces, leaving an end. However, he was unwilling. There were still many unfinished things, many people he had not seen, and many things he could not take with him. Therefore, he could not die. No one could determine his final destination. A strong anti-will shot between his eyes, and the evil god deep in the soul space was also shocked. This anti-will is against people, against fate, against the sky. It feels familiar. Behind Su Yu, a majestic divine image was faintly discernible. Black hair and black clothes, eyes bright like the starry sky, looking down on the common people. At this moment, Su Yu and he seemed to have merged into one. "Forget it, you forced me to do this." Su Yu sighed softly, and the sigh was like the ninth heaven's thunder, going against the current, stirring up the snowflakes for millions of miles. This sigh was filled with resolution, and it was also filled with an unyielding will to defy the heavens. He slowly raised his hand, stretched out his right index finger, and gently touched his eyebrows. His head was slightly raised, looking up at the endless tribulation clouds and snowflakes, and sighed helplessly. "If I hurt countless creatures in the future, you will be responsible." After saying that, his index finger broke his eyebrows. A wisp of bright red blood flowed down from his eyebrows, leaving a fine blood line the size of a hair. Gradually, the blood line gradually became thicker, as if the wound had split open. However, when the blood line became as small as a small wooden stick, in the crack, a silver, cold eyeball appeared. The cracked blood line was actually the eyelid of this eye. When the blood line split open again, an upside-down eye was strangely embedded in Su Yu's forehead. The silver eyeball was cold and ruthless, like the eye of a god, overlooking the common people. Su Yu's eyes were aggressive, bursting with a monstrous light, glancing at the tribulation clouds in the sky, and let out a roar that shook the mountains and rivers. Heaven-devouring demonic eye. Open! In an instant, the upside-down eye between his eyebrows was completely opened. Endless silver light sprayed all over the mountains and rivers in the sky. The silver eyeball suddenly turned pitch black. It was the darkest color of heaven and earth, and no black color in the world could describe the pitch-black color of the eyeball. At the same time, there seemed to be a gloomy sneer coming from the dark. It was an inhuman laughter, full of treachery, greed, and cruelty. The heaven-devouring demonic eye, Su Yu had finally used it. His fate of being devoured by himself had been brought forward by a few years. The heaven-devouring demonic eye opened, and the boundless world was wrapped up by an unprecedented force. Chapter 1077. The feather of thunder that was closest to Su Yu was swallowed in an instant, without even the slightest struggle. Then the second one, the third one, the fourth one. The thunder feather of millions of mountains and rivers were all swept up by the amazing swallowing force and sucked into the dark and incomparably dark eye. It was as if it was not an eye, but a door to another infinite world of darkness. At the same time, endless tribulation clouds were also rolled up. The tribulation clouds struggled and roared, setting off stormy waves one after another, and the thunder feather that could destroy heaven and earth fell one after another. However, none of them could block this strange suction force. One tribulation cloud after another, in the thunder of unwillingness, was also sucked into the sky-devouring demonic eye. Looking at it, the tribulation clouds of millions of miles were like a rushing river, madly tilting towards a bottomless pit. Not long after, it shrank from a radius of 1,000,000 miles to a radius of 500,000 miles, and then to a radius of 200,000 miles. When half a cup of tea had passed, the last tribulation cloud, with unwillingness, was swallowed by the sky-devouring demonic eye. In the soul space, the evil god was shocked, and after a long time, he could not help but wipe the sweat on his forehead. "My mother, this is the sky-devouring demonic eye of the Taotai? Damn, now that I am released, I dare not fight with this kid. The tribulation of 39 has been swallowed. What else in this world can't be swallowed?" Thinking of the records of the Taotai, after adulthood, it would feed on gods. The evil god could not help but tremble and shudder. Millions of miles away, the woman in white with a sword witnessed the whole process, and her face was full of shock. The resurrection of the dead, the reversal of time and space, and the most terrible creature in the world, the Taoyu's devouring power. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, the woman in white would have thought that it was a descendant of a powerful god. She would never have thought that a non-god martial artist would suffer the real tribulation of 39. She would never have thought that the tribulation of 39 was finally swallowed by him. Stepping on the clouds, she hesitated and did not step forward. In her eyes, it was not difficult to see the fear. Su Yu stood in place, and when the Taoyu's eyes slowly closed, Su Yu was finally exhausted and fell to the ground. From head to toe, he could no longer exert any strength, and even his eyelids were forced open. At this moment, it was as if a bottomless pit had appeared in his heart, and the greedy desire was pouring out of the bottomless pit and attacking Su Yu's soul. This is the price of opening the heaven-devouring demonic eye. Su Yu smiled bitterly. After activating it, he would need to devour unceasingly in order to satisfy his heart's greed and satisfy the Taotia's eyes. Then, one day, when he could no longer satisfy it, the Taotia's eyes would devour him. The moment it opened, Su Yu had already decided his future fate. However, it was all worth it. At least he didn't have to die unjustly under the true 39 tribulation. He was just an ordinary martial artist, not a descendant of a deity. However, Su Yu, the evil god, and the woman in white did not expect this. In the azure sky, tribulation clouds actually appeared once more. 1, 2, 3, once more they spread out for millions of kilometers. The aura of the tribulation did not decrease but increased. As for Su Yu, he had lost the opportunity to open the heaven-devouring demonic eye again. Because it had devoured it once, the heaven-devouring demonic eye had fallen into a deep slumber, digesting the power of the heavenly disaster. Su Yu could only smile bitterly as he looked at the tribulation cloud that had reformed. He had tried his best. F***ck, boy, do you have a blood feud with the great way of heaven and earth? Even if you are a descendant of a real deity, you have passed it, and there is no such thing as a second time. You F***king, let me go. I have no future with you. The woman in white was also in disbelief. Impossible. Why do I feel that the great way of heaven and earth is deliberately targeting him? Boom. In the shocking thunder, the feather of thunder appeared as expected, drifting gracefully towards Su Yu. At this moment, no one could save him. Su Yu also slowly closed his eyes, waiting for destruction with unwillingness. However, what was unexpected was that when the feather of thunder was about to fall on Su Yu's body, it suddenly stopped, and then flew back into the tribulation cloud. At the same time, inside the tribulation cloud, there was a faint, strange fluctuation. The tribulation cloud that filled the sky struggled for a while and finally dispersed unwillingly. The sky and the earth were blue again. F***ck, F***ck, F***ck. What is this situation? 3 F***ck's can no longer express how F***king I feel. The evil god's eyes widened. The 39 tribulations actually dispersed on their own. Moreover, he also felt that before the tribulation cloud drifted away, there was a strange fluctuation. It seemed that there was some kind of dispute in the unseen existence. The woman in white was also shocked. What the hell was going on? The second divine tribulation, and it dispersed on its own? Even Su Yu himself was stunned. What is going on? The evil god was shocked for a long time, and pondered. Did the Great Way finally find out that the tribulation thunder hit the wrong person and stopped in time? Hit the wrong person? Su Yu felt like vomiting blood. A single sentence of hitting the wrong person killed him twice, exhausted all his resources, and only a little stock in the 9 jade spiritual pearl was left. It could be said that he was beaten back to before liberation overnight. He had brought such great personal harm, such great damage, and it was over with a single sentence of hitting the wrong person? Seeing Su Yu's unwillingness, the evil god said with lingering fear, "Boy, it is a miracle of miracles that you can survive the real 39 tribulations. I have never seen such a bizarre thing in my life. A little fairy has passed the divine tribulation of the peak dust fairy. No one will believe it." Su Yu resisted the urge to curse and sat up with a gloomy face. When others pass the divine tribulation, they can become gods immediately. It is worth it no matter how much it costs, but what did I get? A body full of injuries? And the opening of the heaven-devouring demonic eye, the price I paid, I didn't get a fart. In the end, he couldn't help but swear. His complaints reverberated throughout the world. Suddenly, there was a wonderful breath between heaven and earth. A milky white light crossed the sky, descended to the earth, and shot Su Yu's abdomen. Su Yu was shocked and wanted to dodge, but he didn't even have the slightest bit of strength. He watched the milky white light sink into Su Yu's abdomen. However, the imagined pain did not come. Instead, there was an extremely comfortable feeling that filled his limbs and bones. The mental strength and physical strength that he had consumed were completely restored in an instant. When the milky white light dissipated, Su Yu was startled and said, "What happened? Did the Great Path hear me curse and settle the score?" You. In the soul space, the evil god couldn't believe it and was extremely excited. You should take a look at your abdomen first. Is there something extra?" Su Yu's heart moved, and he immediately examined his abdomen. As a result, he didn't know that he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. In the dantian of the abdomen, there was a light spot the size of a grain of rice, emitting a bright light. The breath of the light seemed familiar. Looking closely, it was not a light spot. In the light spot, there seemed to be something rotating. Su Yu tried his best to look inside, and finally was surprised to find that in the grain of rice, there was a rotating starry sky, and the stars were constantly rotating. In the grain of rice, there was a miniature dynamic star map. It seems that there is an extra light spot, and there is a dynamic star map inside. Other than that, there is not much change in the body, Su Yu responded to the evil god. However, the evil god didn't respond for a long time. "Hey, did you fall into the cesspool?" Still no response. "Dead." Still no response. "Dead dog, that's enough," Su Yu said. Finally, the response of the evil god floated in Su Yu's mind. "Su Yu, there is an important news to tell you. I hope you are mentally prepared." The voice of the evil god was solemn and serious. After being together for so long, he had never seen the evil god so solemn. "What news?" Su Yu's heart was in his throat. He knew that what he was going to say next must be about the brilliance of the grain of rice. The evil god took a deep breath, full of seriousness and complexity. "Congratulations, you have become a god." Boom. Su Yu seemed to feel endless thunder exploding in his ears. What? He became a god? Su Yu was stunned. He had thought of all possibilities, but he never thought that the evil god would say this. Don't be surprised. I believe that after experiencing the glittering jewel mortal fairy, you should not be unfamiliar with the grain of rice you see. That is the source of divine power. The unique source of divine power that belongs to you, and it is also the source of divine power given by the Great Path after passing the tribulation of 39. There is only one difference in judging whether a creature is a mortal or a god, and that is whether there is a source of divine power. So, congratulations, Su Yu god. The words of the evil god lingered in Su Yu's mind, making him unable to calm down for a long time. Overnight, he became a god from fairy? This surreal feeling made him at a loss. However, after all, he had experienced great storms. After a long time of shock, Su Yu gradually calmed down and said, "There is still a difference from a real god, right?" He did not feel any earth-shattering changes in himself. "It is not that there is a difference, but that you are simply a god of another kind of existence." The evil god sighed faintly, full of amazement. Su Yu raised his eyebrows. Another kind of existence? If the peak mortal fairy succeeds in crossing the tribulation and is given a grain of divine power, then the mortal fairy's strength in the body can be integrated into this grain of divine power, and the mortal fairy's strength will be transformed into divine power. The divine power will then stabilize the God source, so that the God source will develop and strengthen, complementing each other. When the accumulation of the God source reaches a certain level, the divine position will be stable, and from then on, the person will officially be promoted to a god. And you, when you are in the fairy realm, are given a grain of divine power, but have no mortal fairy's strength to transform into divine power, and the god source is idle, unable to be promoted to a god. After listening to the description of the evil god, Su Yu understood his situation. He had obtained the qualifications to become a god, but he did not have the conditions to become a god. Then, when I break through to the mortal fairy, and then transform the mortal fairy's strength, doesn't that mean that I can easily become a god? Suyu said. The evil god said, how can it be so easy? Your god source is not stable enough, and you need divine power to maintain it. Unfortunately, your body does not have the mortal fairy's strength to transform into divine power, and the god source cannot be stabilized by divine power, and it will gradually shrink. I am afraid that the day you cultivate the mortal fairy's strength, the god source will be destroyed. Chapter 1078. A god in this state is also known as a quasi-god, which means that you have obtained the great source origin and are in the stage of nourishing the great source origin. The divine dragon that condensed the dragon blood was also in this quasi-god state, almost the same as you. In other words, Suyu had the title of a god, but he did not have the strength of a god. Suyu was speechless, and after a while, he said, So, I didn't get anything? The evil god sighed. I'm afraid so. Or, the situation is even worse. Why do you say that? Suyu's face sank. The evil god gradually became solemn. In this quasi-god's body, only a drop of blood that condensed the dragon divine power was found, but no great source origin was found. Do you know why? Because the great source origin was taken away. The evil god revealed a very serious inside story. Suyu was surprised. The great source origin can be taken away? Yes, the official gods have completely stabilized the great source origin and integrated it with themselves, but the great source origin of quasi-gods is extremely unstable, and anyone can take it away. Suyu's heart was cold. Does this happen frequently? Frequently. If I find a quasi-god, I will not hesitate to take away the great source origin. You are already a god, why do you need other people's great source origin? Suyu realized the seriousness of the situation and was secretly shocked. The evil god said, First, it can expand my great source origin, and the benefits are endless. Second, even if I don't use it, I can also create man-made gods. Man-made gods? Suyu was shocked again. If the great source origin is given to the peak mortal fairy strong to help them stabilize the great source origin, they can naturally create man-made gods. Although this kind of god has lost the ability to grow, and its real strength is far less than the real gods, it is still a god, above all living beings. Any force will snatch the great source origin of quasi-gods at all costs. The evil god stared at Suyu and said slowly, So, do you understand what I mean? A fairy boy is sitting on a great path bestowed a great source origin. In the eyes of any force, you are simply an insult to them. Whoever doesn't snatch your great source origin is stupid. Suyu never expected that he would give everything he had and go through the 39 ordeals in exchange for a great source origin. In the end, not only was it useless, but it became a fatal disaster. At this moment, Suyu really wanted to curse out loud. However, Suyu's current life was worthless. Not only did he have to deal with the human tribulation and the emotional tribulation, but he also had to deal with the heaven-devouring demonic eye. He didn't care about one more threat to his life. Suyu clenched his fist. The anger in his heart was hard to quell, and he was still unwilling to give up. Is there no other way besides cultivating the mortal fairy's strength? The evil god shook his head. Of course not, unless you cultivate divine power directly. The heretic god could not help but feel pity for him. This kid was really too unlucky. He had inexplicably been targeted by the tribulation of 3 nines, and it was the kind that would not rest until one of them was dead. He had endured it with great difficulty, but in the end, he had brought about the calamity of murder. This was even more dangerous than the opening of the heaven-devouring demonic eye. Once it was discovered that Suyu had an unstable godly spirit, he would undoubtedly be hunted down and killed, especially the peak mortal fairies. However, Suyu's expression changed subtly, and he thought to himself, divine power? It's true that it's impossible for me to cultivate divine power, but the diluted divine blood in the divine nine-dragon cauldron seems to. As a prospective god, a drop of divine dragon blood that was condensed should contain a trace of the divine dragon's divine power, right? Although the divine blood was diluted, in theory, it still existed, but it was extremely weak. Thinking of this, Su Yu's mind became active, and he operated the dragon power in his body, slowly channeling it into the godly spirit in his dantian. At first, the godly spirit had no reaction, and the dragon power seemed to be just ordinary power. However, when all of Su Yu's dragon power was channeled into the godly spirit, suddenly, the galaxy in the godly spirit sped up by a tiny bit. It was really a tiny bit. If Su Yu was not the owner of this godly spirit, he would not have noticed this slight change. At the same time, from within the godly spirit, a new power was born. That was the power that caused the entire Jojo continent to tremble, the power of the gods. Su Yu did not have time to control it at all. This newly born divine power went out of control, penetrated the godly spirit, and shot out of Su Yu's body. From the top of his head, it shot straight into the distant sky. Boom! In an instant, an earth-shattering scene appeared. The void around the Jojo continent shattered at the same time. The 9 great continents, the 5 continents, all the spaces were shattered by a transcendent power. This power shocked all the creatures on the continent. From the lowly ants to the supreme dust fairies. All of them felt the power of the gods. In an instant, the power of the 10 dust fairies resonated and rushed into the sky from all corners of the continent, shining with the power of the gods. At the same time, hundreds of millions of creatures couldn't help but worshipping the arrival of the gods. In the imperial city, the lurking blood demon suddenly stood up, and his eyes were shocked. The power of the gods. Did a god descend? A trace of uneasiness filled his face. The Duanshan Cliffmaster and the Central Prefecture's king, who were fighting, stopped and stared at the soaring divine power. Gods! The Duanshan Cliffmaster's face showed some worry and fear. The Central Prefecture's king also showed a look of longing and envy. A trace of divine power could shatter the void of Jojo. This was the power of the gods, and it was the supreme power that he had always been pursuing. Somewhere on the continent, a male or female exclamation floated in the void. Gods? The sacred Kylan has been dead for many years, and there are still gods hiding. The waters of the Jojo continent are really deep. A million miles away from the Red Blood Palace, the woman in white was shocked and couldn't suppress her shock. He really became a god. A fairy had become a god. Even though she had seen it with her own eyes, she still couldn't believe it. In the eastern continent, the 2 prefectures' kings turned their eyes to the central continent, shocked. The gods have come to Jojo. Finally, the glittering jeweled demonic god has been discovered by the gods of the human race. Have they come to destroy her? An excited voice echoed over the eastern continent. In the extreme north of the Saint Demon sect, a dark figure with a demonic aura confronted the central continent. God, which god has come? Jojo is in turmoil. What is he going to do? In the ruins of the Red Blood Palace, Su Yu stared at the shattered void of Jojo and couldn't help but click his tongue. Was this the power of divine power? Moreover, it was just a very weak trace of divine power, and it broke out uncontrollably and penetrated the void of the entire Jojo continent? *T. The evil god took a deep breath and screamed in a trembling voice, "You, how did you get the divine power? If Su Yu really cultivated the divine power, wouldn't he really be able to become a god in one step? This was too ridiculous." Chapter 1079. This was completely beyond common sense. How could a fairy condense divine power? The only thing that could stabilize the source god was the divine power born in the source god. It was useless to borrow external divine power. The divine power that Su Yu had just released, the evil god clearly sensed that it originated from Su Yu's source god. It was the divine power that Su Yu had successfully transformed, not the remnant of a god. In shock, the evil god felt that the dog's brain was not enough. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out how Su Yu did it. Su Yu's face was filled with uncontrollable joy. He actually succeeded. His guess was completely correct. After the divine nine-dragon cauldron diluted the foreign divine blood and removed the mark of the original owner of the divine blood, it became an ownerless object. After being integrated into Su Yu's body, it became Su Yu's. Therefore, the faint divine power hidden in it was stamped with Su Yu's mark. The only problem was that he had just condensed all the dragon power in his body and extracted a faint trace of divine power, which was brought about by the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Su Yu could not control the watering of the divine nine-dragon cauldron, and the interval was often relatively long. He wanted to rely on this method to stabilize the source god and completely integrate it with himself to become a god, but it was not realistic. But the advantage was that the source god would not wither. With this method, he could produce divine power from time to time and nourish the source god. When Su Yu advanced to the peak dust fairy, he began to produce divine power on his own. Although the sacrifice was great, the harvest was amazing. The qualification to become a god that countless dust fairies dreamed of was now in Su Yu's hands. Of course, he would not forget the evil god's reminder. A fairy holding an unstabilized source god was like a carving on his forehead. "Come and rob me." Therefore, unless it was necessary, he would never expose the existence of the source god to anyone. The movement just now was a little big. "I'm afraid we have to leave immediately." Glancing at the Jiuzhou void that was gradually closing, Su Yu said, "It was not a good place to stay for a long time." He believed that the nearby strong people would arrive soon. Before leaving, Su Yu glanced at the ground with great regret. A large amount of dust had accumulated in a thick layer. It was all his life savings, especially when he spat out all the items in his interspatial ring. There were at least 700 or 800 million crystals and many low-level magic weapons brought from the Zhenlong continent. Just as Su Yu was about to take a step and leave, he was shocked to discover that there were 2 intact items in the dust. Su Yu lifted his leg and shook off the dust on the ground. He was extremely surprised. How could it be perfectly preserved in the feather of thunder? Su Yu sucked the 2 objects into his palm. In his left hand was a pitch-black scroll that was scalding hot. The Great Sun Punishment Fairy picture? Su Yu was surprised. He had almost forgotten about the fairy-level cultivation technique that he had obtained from the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion. Su Yu had not been able to decipher this cultivation technique for a long time. He did not know how to cultivate it, so he had set it aside. In the tribulation of Thunderfeather just now, a treasure like the underworld pearl was shattered, but the Great Sun Punishment Fairy picture remained unscathed, which really surprised Su Yu. The moment Su Yu touched it, the black scroll in his hand suddenly shattered, turning into black ashes that floated into Su Yu's palm. "It's broken?" Su Yu was stunned, but his expression immediately changed. The black scroll turned into powder, but in the middle of the scroll, there was actually a transparent crystal sheet, shaped like a book page, extremely thin. In the scroll, there is actually a hidden layer? Su Yu picked up the crystal sheet and stared at it. He saw that in the crystal, there were 9 scorching suns carved, and each one was full of black flames. Looking at the flames, Su Yu was subconsciously shocked and almost threw it out. That breath, if it was not the feather of thunder, then what was it? Instinctively, Su Yu wanted to throw it out, but rationally, he forcibly restrained himself. Wait, something was wrong. The feather of thunder was thunder, and the 9 black suns in front of him were flames. After looking at it for a long time, Su Yu suddenly understood. The flames in the scorching sun did indeed come from the feather of thunder. The Great Sun Punishment Fairy picture had absorbed the power of the feather of thunder and diluted it into thunder flame. In each round of the scorching sun, The thunder flame contained power equivalent to a wisp of the feather of thunder. 9 rounds were equivalent to 9 wisps of thunder silk. Thinking of this, Su Yu felt a lingering fear in his heart. Even a wisp of thunder silk could kill most of the creatures in the world. Even the dust fairies at the peak would never dare to touch the thunder silk easily, right? Looking at the crystal sheet again, there was a line of fine small words. It was the cultivation method of the Great Sun Punishment Fairy picture. At this point, Su Yu finally understood why he could not find the cultivation instructions for this technique for a long time. It turned out that this technique required a corresponding powerful flame to begin cultivation. Only when the thin crystal sheet was filled with the flame energy of the 9 scorching suns would the cultivation method be manifested. As Su Yu looked at the cultivation method, the crystal sheet flashed leisurely, turned into a ray of crystal light, and entered the dantian of Su Yu's abdomen. According to the introduction of the crystal sheet, one only needed to follow the introduction of the technique and refine the scorching sun in order to be able to cultivate. Moreover, the stronger the flame contained in the scorching sun, the easier it was to cultivate. The thunder flame that was diluted by the feather of thunder should be the limit of the Great Sun Punishment Fairy picture. He believed that the speed of cultivation would be faster than expected. Su Yu was naturally happy to get a fairy-level technique. When he looked at the thing that existed in his right palm, there was a complicated look in his eyes. Mountain River Dragon Bow, old friend, I almost forgot about you. Su Yu stroked the dragon bow. It had helped him a lot in the past. It was just that there was no opportunity to use it later. Unexpectedly, it survived the feather of thunder. On the surface of its body, there were dark marks one after another, but there was not even a crack, which was particularly inconsistent with its inferior material. Su Yu knew that it was not the dragon bow itself that could resist the feather of thunder, but an arrow sealed in the dragon bow. It was Shen Yichen's arrow in the past. He could even feel that if the seal was undone at this moment, this arrow would not be under his control and would shoot out on its own. Putting the bow into the 9 jade spiritual pearl, Su Yu's eyes were filled with a strange light. Why was this arrow sealed? Was it also Shen Yichen's arrangement that it eventually fell into his hands? Although he was dead, Su Yu always felt that many things seemed to have the shadow of Shen Yichen. Was he really dead? As a former emperor who was about to ascend to the throne of Jiuzhou, the top existence of the continent, could he really die so easily? After thinking for a while, Su Yu shook his head. Since there were 2 intact items, Su Yu swept away the rest of the ashes with some anticipation to see if he could find any more surprises. As a result, there was an unexpected discovery. The scroll obtained from the treasure house of the 3rd Deputy Region Master was safe and sound. Unfolding the scroll, Xia Jingyu's beautiful face came into view, captivating and difficult to look away. This painting is really extraordinary. Su Yu held the scroll tightly, more and more surprised by its mysteriousness. It came from the forbidden area of the human race in the far west, and it could make a stage 3 all creations strong man fascinated for half a year. Most importantly, there was an indescribable mysterious charm in the scroll. When he had time, he must study this picture carefully. As for the last item, Su Yu was more surprised. It was a crystal ball and a bone. Su Yu had challenged the virtual shadow of the 100th floor of the Marshall Tower, the reward he received as the one who passed. According to the Black Dog, the crystal ball of the 100th floor could definitely draw a low-grade fairy artifact, or even a higher-grade mid-grade fairy artifact, and the key to opening it was the bone. From the 1st floor to the 99th floor, the bones were destroyed into dust. Only the Black Dog reluctantly handed over the 100th floor reward, but it survived the tribulation of Thunder Feather. It was really unexpected. Holding the bone and the crystal ball in his hand, Su Yu suppressed the idea of opening it at this moment and murmured, "Did the Saint Kylin really give this to me just to descend?" Chapter 1080. Recalling the complete demise of the sacred Kylin, Su Yu's heart felt heavy. touching the martial tower in his arms, he felt even more responsible. He guarded the martial tower for 10,000 years and passed it to me before he passed away. I can't just die like this. The heavenly tribulation had been passed. Although it was muddle-headed, it could be said that he had barely passed it. Next was the human tribulation and relationship tribulation. Is the real 3-9 ordeal also divided according to the ordeals of heaven, people, and relationships? Suyu asked. The evil god shook his head. The 3-9 tribulations are all heavenly tribulations. They are divided into 3 stages, mixed origin tribulations. You have only passed the first stage, the minor tribulation. In theory, there should be another heavenly tribulation every 9 days. It should be a fire tribulation and a devil tribulation. Suyu's heart thumped. Those were just small tribulations? If that's the case, I still have to go through the divine tribulation? Suyu's heart was pounding. The devouring eye's slumber would take at least a few months. I won't, the evil god said as Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. Since even the great path divine source has been given to you, it indicates that the divine tribulation is over. But, the god of evil added, the fake 39 tribulations that you were supposed to go through didn't end. I can sense that you still have 2 more tribulations. Upon hearing that, Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't a divine tribulation, there was still a glimmer of hope for survival. However, after experiencing the disturbance of the divine tribulation just now, your following 2 tribulations seem to be in a mess as well. Originally, the human tribulation should have come first, followed by the relationship tribulation. But now that might not be the case, said the evil god. Suyu furrowed his brows. Chaos. The sequence of the human tribulation and the relationship tribulation might be messed up, but would the other aspects be messed up too? Just as Suyu was thinking, the evil god suddenly reminded him, leave quickly, a powerful being is descending. Suyu did not dare to hesitate. He took out the wooden bird that was stored in the 9 jade spiritual pearl and disappeared into the void to escape. Not long after they left, the woman in white teleported to the ruins of the Red Blood Palace. She stared in the direction in which Suyu had left and said with a bitter smile, it seems that this isn't the right time. This prospective deity really doesn't want to meet people easily. After hesitating for a moment, the white-clothed woman curiously decided not to chase after him to avoid any misunderstandings. In Tianya City, Suyu went straight to the Red Blood Palace's garrison headquarters. Greetings, Master Su. May I know how the sect is doing? Xiao Han quickly went forward to pay his respects. When he looked at Suyu, his heart trembled for some unknown reason, and he could not help but want to kneel down and worship him. Suyu comforted her. The faction. Something did happen. Palace Mistress Mo led everyone in the faction to evacuate, so she should be safe and sound. However, she might be taking refuge and didn't leave any information about her whereabouts. Let's wait for a while. What? The sect is gone? Xiao Han could hear the underlying meaning. It was indignant and sad. The older generation's attachment to the sect far exceeded that of the younger generation. If the sect is gone, we can rebuild it. If the people are gone, where can we find them? Cabinet Master Xiao Han, wait for the news quietly. Don't act rashly. Suyu was afraid that the old man would take things too hard and fight the ghost army. Xiao Han clenched and unclenched his fists, then clenched and unclenched his fists. In the end, he sighed dejectedly. Suyu sighed inwardly. The Red Blood Palace was gone just like that. Cabinet Master, how are the preparations for the matter I asked you to make? Suyu's eyes shone as he asked. Pavilion Master Xiao Han came back to his senses and nodded solemnly. Everything is ready. As he spoke, he took out a golden piece of paper. There were many crisscrossing lines on it. At the intersection of each line, there was a node that shone the color of a crystal. Looking at it as a whole, the topography outlined by the lines was impressively the Jiuzhou continent. This is the Jiuzhou transportation map. All the long-distance transportation portals are marked, Xiao Han said. He then looked around and carefully fished out 2 pitch-black nails. These are the forbidden items that Master Su wants, the space nails. In the Jiuzhou continent, the production of the space nails was prohibited. Its use was very limited, but once it was used, it would cause endless trouble. If it was nailed into the transportation portal, it would be difficult to use it again for a month. No almighty being would be able to remove the space nails. They could either wait patiently for a month, or destroy the transportation portal and rebuild it. The latter would undoubtedly take a longer time. Therefore, a single spatial nail would cause a 1-month gap between the 2 regions. It was especially troublesome for long-distance transportation portals, so the production and sale of it was absolutely prohibited. Xiao Han had taken the risk to buy 2 space nails from the black market. If anyone found out, he would be punished to death by any all creation's old monster. Master Su, why did you ask for the space nails? Su Yu smiled bitterly. An old friend that I haven't seen for a long time has caught up with me. I can only try to hide as far away as possible. I'm afraid that he will catch up, so I can only choose to use the space nails. Was it really against the transportation portals? Xiao Han could hear the helplessness in Su Yu's words. He had no choice but to say, if it's a short-distance transportation portal, it's fine. The guards are all local strongmen, so they shouldn't pose much of a threat to Master Su. However, if it's a long-distance transportation portal, they are all personally appointed by the prefecture's king. Their strength is at least at the level of Stage 4 all creations. Master Su, don't force yourself. They all have the right to act first and report later. There were countless transportation portals in Jiuzhou, and they were divided into different grades according to the distance of the transportation. The transportation portals between cities were small-scale transportation portals. The transportation portals that spanned several cities were medium-sized transportation portals. The transportation portals that spanned one region were large-scale transportation portals. The transportation portals that spanned several regions were super transportation portals. The transportation portals that spanned a prefecture were divine-level transportation portals. As the most prosperous place in the blessed and heavenly lands, Tianya City only had one large-scale transportation portal that could only transport people to the neighboring Heavenly Knife region. Only the central prefecture had the super transportation portals that spanned several regions. As for the divine-level transportation portals that spanned a prefecture, there were only 9 in the world, and they were all located in the center of Jiuzhou. Mortal fairies could at most create the super transportation portals. The divine-level transportation portals were beyond their capabilities. It was said that the 9 divine-level transportation portals of Jiuzhou had existed since the Jiuzhou continent had existed. At that time, the human race of Jiuzhou was weak, and there were no mortal fairies. How could there be the divine-level transportation portals? Therefore, the 9 most ancient transportation portals were considered miracles and were called the divine-level transportation portals. The divine-level transportation portals of the central prefecture were located in the imperial city of the central prefecture. Usually, the large-scale transportation portals and above were guarded by all creation's strong men. The super transportation portals were guarded by even more powerful people. As for the divine-level transportation portals, the guards would probably be ridiculously powerful. I understand. Cabinet Master, take care. I'll make a move first. Su Yu cupped his fist. Xiao Han asked, where are you going? The central prefecture city, Su Yu said indifferently. When he finished speaking, he flashed to the large-scale transportation portal of Tianya City. This portal could only transport people to the Heavenly Knife region. If he wanted to go to the Central Prefecture region, he would have to borrow the way from the Heavenly Knife region. Arriving at the Heavenly Knife region again, the Heavenly Knife City looked very different. The once bustling place was now dilapidated, and the people were in a panic. Walking in the Heavenly Knife City, there were only a few ghosts. It's only been 2 days, and the Heavenly Knife City has undergone such a drastic change? Suyu couldn't help but be surprised. It had only been a short time since he successfully stole the account book and spread the news that the Heavenly Knife Region Master had colluded with the ghost race. However, the martial artists in the Heavenly Knife City had sensed something was wrong and fled. Swoosh! Suddenly, a group of all creation's old monsters with powerful auras flew over their heads. Not far away, another group of all creation's old monsters could be sensed. They were dressed differently and belonged to different camps. Even from their physiques and facial features, they were very different from the people of the Central Prefecture. They were all creation's strong men from the foreign continent. The 9 great prefectures' kings reacted very quickly. They sent strong men to occupy the Heavenly Knife City so quickly. I wonder what happened to the Heavenly Knife Region Master and the others, Suyu murmured. However, the Heavenly Knife Region Master had prepared resources for the ghost race for 100 years. How could he not have prepared a way out for himself? He must have made a prompt decision to run away the day the account book was lost. Shaking his head, Suyu came to the teleportation hall of the Heavenly Knife City. The hall had been taken over by the All Creation's old monsters from the foreign continent. They were strictly checking the martial artists who came and went. Moreover, these All Creation's old monsters also detained a group of Tianya City's original residents. They were all tied up on the ground with miserable faces. Do you know him? At that moment, a martial artist came to the teleportation portal in fear. One of the All Creation's old monsters guarding the portal pointed at him and asked the original resident. Seeing that they all shook their heads, the All Creation's old monster allowed the person to use the portal to leave. Next, the All Creation's old monster was indifferent and cautious. Suyu stepped forward and stood in front of him. Do you know him? The All Creation's old monster shouted at the original resident. Many of them shook their heads, but many of them cried out in surprise, especially an old man. He struggled to get up as if he had seen a life-saving straw. His face was full of embarrassment as he said, "Master Su, please save me and my family." Suyu glanced over and saw a white-haired old man with a mournful face. That old man was none other than the Ouyang family of the Heavenly Knife City. Speaking of which, this old man had secretly betrayed him and sold him to the 3rd Deputy Region Master. Now, he had the cheek to ask Suyu for help. Moreover, could Suyu save him? How could he fight with the All Creation's old monsters here for no reason? There were more than 10 All Creation's old monsters in the Great Teleportation Hall. All of them were eyeing him with hostility. Hearing the cries of the original residents, especially the Ouyang family master, the All Creation's old monsters who were guarding the formation shot fierce glances at him. Who is he? The All Creation's old monster who was blocking Su Yu's way asked the original residents with a cold face. His eyes were fixed on Su Yu, full of suspicion and contempt. Judging by their demeanor, they had probably mistaken Su Yu for one of the Heavenly Knife City Master's men. The Ouyang family master was scared out of his wits. He was waiting for Su Yu to save his life. How could he dare drag him into this? He said hurriedly, No, he is not from the Heavenly Knife City." "Then what are you all so surprised about? You all look like you know him." The All Creation's old monster's expression softened slightly. The group of original residents said bitterly, "How can we not know him? He is Lord Su Yu, the one who exposed the shocking conspiracy of the Heavenly Knife City Master." The All Creation's old monster's indifferent expression changed when he suddenly realized the identity of the young man in front of him. He took a few steps back in fear. The other All Creation's old monsters trembled as well. They looked at Su Yu abruptly, their expressions becoming unnatural. There was fear and a strange respect on their faces. "So it is Su Yu, Mr. Su. We have heard so much about you." The All Creation's old monster who was blocking Su Yu's way was the quickest to react. he hid the strange look on his face and spoke very politely. "Greetings, Mr. Su." The rest of the all creation's old monsters greeted him first. Su Yu felt strange being treated so politely by the all creation's old monsters. He returned the greeting and thought to himself, are they all creation's old monsters from the foreign continent? Even if they have heard of me, there is no need to be so polite, right? The other party's excessive respect made Su Yu feel that something was wrong.